IT, please let us know when we are streaming.
We are live.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting into order, but I've got an echo, I think. Are you okay?
Just had to fix that.
Okay, good. All right, so I am calling this meeting into order. We're now in session in the Historic Districts Review Board meeting duly noticed for this evening, March 25, 2025. I'm John Bienvenu. I'll be serving as acting chair in the absence of Chair Rios, who is under the weather tonight. May I have a roll call, please?
Absolutely. So, Chair Rios,
Excused?
Acting Chair Bienvenu,
Here,
Member Biche,
excused.
Member Aguilar Madrano.
Here.
Member Degnan.
Here.
Member Mather.
Here.
Member Cherry.
Here.
You have a quorum, Chair.
Thank you very much. Well, as you may have noticed, we have a new member we'd like to welcome to the board. Mr. Scott Cherry has been appointed by the mayor and approved by the governing body to serve a 2-year term on the Historic Districts Review Board. So I'd like to welcome him to the board. Mr. Cherry has appeared before us many times from the other side of the podium, so we all know each other to some extent, but it's going to be a great pleasure to have you with us on this side, and we look forward to working with you. And
Very much.
if Chair Rios were here, she would ask if you wanted to make any comments to introduce yourself to the public, but it's completely up to you.
Yeah. I'm been working in the Santa Fe Historic District for about 18 years, been in business in Santa Fe here for about 18 years. Been in front of the board many, many times. And just really happy to be able to serve the community and participate.
Great, thank you very much. All right, so we have an agenda that's been duly published. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, Chair. And item number 8 under old business, actually under number 7, staff communications, evolution of the city of Santa Fe Historic District ordinance. It will not be done tonight. In place will be Amanda, who will be speaking about the awards coming up. And then on old business, item A, 2025-009916 HDRB 1010 Camino San Acacio has been postponed.
Great. Do we, board members may I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So move.
A second?
Aguilar Madrano seconds.
Thank you very much. Roll call vote, please.
Member Aguilar Madrano.
Yes.
Member Degnan.
Yes.
Member Mather.
Yes.
Member Cherry.
Yes.
Motion has passed.
Great. Next on the agenda are approval of minutes. Let's see. I'm going to have to take these sequentially because some members of the board were present for some of these meetings and not others. We have quite a few of them to go through. And thank you, staff, for pulling those together and presenting them to us, which comes close to bringing us up to date, which is wonderful. Let me start with the June 11, 2024 minutes. Are there any changes or comments? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve?
Aguilar Madrano moves to approve the minutes from June 11th, 2024.
Is there a second?
Neither seconds.
Roll call vote, please.
Member Cherry.
Yes.
Member Mather.
Yes.
Member Degnan.
Yes.
Member Aguilar Madrano. Yes. Motion has passed.
Thank you. Next is our minutes of June 25, 2024. Are there any changes? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Aguilar Madrano moves to approve the minutes from June 25th, 2024.
Second?
Neither seconds.
Roll call vote.
Member Degnan.
Yes.
Member Mather.
Yes.
Member Cherry.
Yes.
Member Aguilar Madrano. Yes. The motion has passed.
Next is July 9, 2024. Are there any changes? May I have a motion?
Degnan moves approval.
Approve. Is there a second?
Aguilar Madrona seconds.
All in favor or roll call vote?
Member Aguilar Madrona? Yes. Member Dagnan?
Yes.
Member Mather?
Yes.
Member Cherry?
Yes.
The motion has passed.
Okay, next we have, was that July 9 or 23? We just did. July 23, 2024. Any changes? Is there a motion?
Aguilar Madrona moves to approve the minutes from July 23rd, 2024.
Mather seconds.
Roll call vote?
Member Cherry?
Yes.
Member Mather?
Yes.
Member Dagnan?
Yes.
Member Aguilar Madrona? Yes. The motion has passed.
You, August 13, 2024 minutes. Are there any changes? You have a motion?
Degnan moves approval.
Aguilar Madrona seconds.
Roll call vote?
Member Cherry?
Yes.
Member Mather?
Yes.
Member Dagnan?
Yes.
Member Aguilar Madrona? Yes. The motion has passed.
You, September 10, 2024. Are there any changes? Motion, please.
Move to approve.
Second,
Mather seconds.
roll call vote?
Member Aguilar Madrona? Abstain. Member Dagnan?
Yes.
Member Mather?
Yes.
Member Cherry?
Yes.
Motion has passed.
Minutes of September 24, 2024. Any changes?
Yes, Mr. Chair,
Proceed.
I happened to notice Mr. Katz's name was not spelled correctly. On page 62 of that month of minutes. The A Z is missing, and he's a former member. I'm sure he would be happy to know that he's going to be immortalized correctly.
All right. Any other changes? May I have a motion to approve as amended?
Aguilar Madrona moves to approve the minutes as amended for September 24th, 2024.
Is there a second?
Mather seconds.
Roll call vote?
Member Aguilar Madrona? Yes. Member Dagnan?
Yes,
Member Mather?
Yes.
Member Cherry?
Yes.
The motion has passed.
November 26, 2024 minutes. Are there any changes? May I have a motion?
move approval.
Second,
Mather seconds.
call vote?
Member Mather?
Yes.
Member Dagnan?
Yes,
Member Cherry?
Yes.
Member Aguilar Madrona? Yes. The motion has passed.
Thank you. February 25, 2025, I'm sorry. Are there any changes? May I have a motion to approve?
so move.
Is there a second?
Mather seconds.
Roll call vote?
Member Cherry?
Yes.
Member Mather?
Yes.
Member Dagnan?
Yes,
Member Aguilar Madrona? The motion has passed.
Thank you. Okay, we got through the minutes. We also have quite a few findings and conclusions. I'm going to lump these together in three categories. The first are findings and conclusions from cases that were heard on October 8, 2024. That's case 2024-009128 HDRB at 410 Camino Cabra and 2024-009129 HDRB at 544 Canyon Road. Does anyone have any proposed changes? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve?
move approval.
Do I have a second?
Mather seconds.
Roll call vote, please.
Member Aguilar Madrona? Yes. Member Dagnan?
Yes,
Member Mather?
Yes.
Member Cherry?
Yes.
Motion has passed.
Thank you. Next set is C through F. These are findings and conclusions from cases heard on October 22nd, 2024. The cases are 2024-009042 HDRB at 645 Garcia Street. Case 2024-009207 HDRB at 710 Canyon Road. Case number 2024-009209 HDRB at 626 Gomez Road. And case 2024-009208 HDRB at 505 Apodaca Hill. Are there any proposed revisions? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve that set of findings and conclusions?
so move.
Madrona seconds.
Thank you very much. May I have a roll call vote?
Member Cherry?
Yes.
Member Mather?
Yes.
Member Dagnan?
Yes,
Member Aguilar Madrona? Yes. The motion has passed.
Two. All right, we have a group of 6 findings and conclusions from cases heard on November 26, 2024. Those are in order, case number 2024-009321 HDRB at 1 Plaza Fatima. Case number 2024-009376 HDRB at 907 Don Miguel Place. Case number 2024-009378 HDRB at 835 East Alameda Street. Case number 2024-009369 HDRB at 345 Garcia Street. Case 2024-009372 HDRB at 1182 Cerro Gordo Road. And case number 2024-009381 at 532 Don Gaspar Avenue. Are there any proposed changes? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve that set of findings and conclusions?
Move approval.
Thank you. Second?
Mather seconds. Sorry, hon.
Great. Thank you very much. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Member Aguilar Madrano, Member Dagnan,
Yes.
Member Mather,
Yes.
Member Cherry.
Yes.
The motion has passed.
Very good. We are through the findings and conclusions. The next matter on the agenda is matters from the public. If there are any members of the public in the room that wish to speak, please come to the podium and try to keep your remarks to 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, Stephanie Benanato. I brought up to you last time about the voting that you're supposed to be doing here when you have a quorum of 4 people, minimum quorum. And it says again, when a quorum is present at any meeting, the vote of a majority of members present shall decide any questions brought before such a meeting. Mr. Rubalid there invited me to share any research that I did on this matter. So I'm doing that. His quote, his reliance on a 1951 school board case is really factually and legally weak, to say the least. Inappropriate, irrelevant, really. Because in this case, the state board had 5 members that were voting members. So they had 5 members, 2 ex officio members. One was the governor and one was an elected school board official. And they did not have any procedures. So again, very, very different than this board that has a very specific rule here in a resolution. And what they said is if there is, and I've given you this and I've tried to underline it so you can see, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, but to summarize, it says that they were following the normal procedure that they followed, and that when there is no procedure, then you use Robert's Rules of Order, basically. And so the Robert's Rules of Order says that ex officio members shall not be included in the count when determining the number needed for a quorum, and they shall not be counted when determining if a quorum is actually present. So basically, you had 5 members. They voted 3-2. The ex officio member voted to abstain. So apparently, in this case, in 1951, you could vote for, if you were ex officio, you could vote for, against, or abstain. In this case, the member abstained. This is not the case when you have a 2-1 vote, with 4 members present. The actual rule that applies, and we know from Member Bienvenu, now acting chair, that the city has added a word into that sentence. And they say it's the vote of a majority of voting members present. That's their rationale. However, there's a rule for statutory interpretation, which is the relevant rule, and it has been existing for decades and decades. And I gave you just a few cases. State versus Maestas, which is a 207 New Mexico Supreme Court case called the plain meaning rule. And it says that statutes are to be given effect as written without room for construction unless the language is doubtful, ambiguous, or adherence to the literal use of the words would lead to injustice, absurdity, or contradiction. And this was about whether it had to do with bribing public officials and employees and legislators. And judges were not mentioned. And the state wanted it to apply to judges. And the court looked at the definition of public officer or employee, and it specifically exempted judges and legislators. So they say no ambiguity. I just have two more cases.
And I
State
asked
versus
2 minutes,
Lopez.
but please finish your thought.
Yes, first State versus Lopez. In determining legislative intent, we first look to the language used and give effect to the plain meaning of that language. Under the plain meaning rule, if the plain meaning of the statute is clear and ambiguous, we refrain from further statutory interpretation. Moreover, when a statute at issue is complete and makes sense as written, we do not read into the statute any words that are not there. So the insertion of the word voting into this resolution about how you vote is inappropriate, actually improper. The State versus Carroll, which is a 2015 New Mexico Court of Appeals case, it basically says the same thing.
Let Ms. Benonato.
And I
thank
just
you.
want to.
2 minutes is up, please.
You have it,
Two more,
have it in
please.
writing and we'll.
As pursuant to the.
be able to-
2 minutes is up, please.
Yes, I'm going to have to ask you.
I just want to do one more thing because this is a city code for the city.
I'm
Two
sorry,
minutes
I
is up,
have
Bev.
to ask you to,
And again, you have a
comment.
super majority there.
thank
You
you.
require
Please-
5
Please leave the
members,
podium,
even
Ms.
when there's a
Benonato.
quorum of 5. So I believe.
2 minutes is up.
You again
Advice.
to
Please.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else in the room that wishes to speak? Is there anyone online?
Sorry, Chair Bienvenu, no, there are no hands raised.
Thank you very much. Next matter on the agenda is staff communications.
Chair Bienvenu and board members. I would just like to remind you that April 8th, we will come before you with the nominations for our 2025 Heritage Preservation Awards. And also remind you that March 31st is the deadline for nominations. I have so far received 1 nomination from this board. So I would ask if you could please all participate and provide us with any nominations that you may have. Staff is working on a list to provide to you of things that have been approved. So there may be addresses or things that you might want to submit to us that may not be on the list that we give to you. So still give your nomination and votes, even if they're not on the list provided. So you'll get an email from me tomorrow afternoon for those addresses. And also I'm still working with you all in coordination on who will be presenting the awards. So please, if you'd like to volunteer, email me as well. Do I stand for any questions? Thank you for your participation in advance.
Thank you very much for all the work that you put into that project and all of staff. Yes, Ms. Limboy.
Thank you, Chair. With reference to the presentation that Mr. Mokino is going to be making tonight, Mr. Mokino and current planning staff and I are working to prepare for the update, phase 1 update of the Land Development Code. We're almost over the finish line so that we can start the public hearing process, which includes this board, as well as the Planning Commission and the City Council and City Council committees. So there is a lot to go over. The purpose of that presentation, which we'll refine and provide to you next time, is to provide an overview of the Historic Districts Ordinance, where it has come from, where, and then how that fits into the ordinance that is being proposed. No major changes have been made, other than some finessing of the design standards that we worked through with the committee. And we will present to the entire board as well. So, so we will have that ready for you next time. We anticipate at this point, hopefully we'll get there. The end of April, beginning of May is when we hope to be at the governing body. The other project that we're working on as a department is the Green Building Code update, which you all, I believe, had an educational session on. And so that's expected to go to, this is related to the International Building Code, but is going to be going to the City Council for review and approval as well. So there's many changes. We also had the kickoff of the Santa Fe General Plan update. And so if you're interested in participation and or being a community partner, please go to santafeforward.org, www.santafeforward.org, and look for all the information there. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for that update. Next item on the agenda is new business. I would like to inform the public as well as the applicants that if you disagree with the decision of the board tonight, you almost certainly, and possibly for some members of the public, have a right of appeal to the governing body. The deadlines and procedures for an appeal are set forth in section 14-3.17 of the city code. And you can also discuss those deadlines with staff or the city's attorney's office if you have any questions. So with that, let's proceed to the first case on the agenda, which is case number 2025-009941 HDRB 416 Sosia Lane. Mr. Duran.
Evening, Chair. Bienvenue, members of the board. Thank you for being here this evening. In case number 2025-009941 HDRB 416 Sosia Lane is a single-family residence listed as non-contributing to the downtown and east side historic district. The main residential structure was built in 1946 on a 0.11 acre lot and totaled 1,735 square feet of roofed area. The structure was built in the Spanish Pueblo vernacular architectural design style as seen by the adobe block and wood and viga construction materials, flat roof with rounded parapets, and recessed doors and windows. The structure has now been enveloped from alterations from 2002 and 2005. The main structure does have elements of the original construction, and some are evident on the east portion of the north elevation. With the current request and previous alterations to the structure, there is a minimal historic presence on the streetscape. So here we have on the north elevation, we can see, and here the applicant presented the removal of a sliding glass door and to infill the sliding glass door and infill it, and then add a small window in that location here, the proposed location. Here was the entrance on the east elevation where the residents park. Kind of give you an overview of the as you enter into the property. Here we have the current pergola, very strong wood beams currently. However, they're starting to rot out, and the applicant is proposing a 497 square foot pergola to portal addition. It'll be roofed with a torch down roof system and drainage out into the yardscape. Here we have the south elevation. We have a sliding glass door. And here we have that west elevation. As you can see in these two elevations, this is the proposed 170 square foot pergola addition. The pergola meets all zoning requirements and historic design standards. Here's a site plan presented by the applicant showing the proposed pergola to portal addition that will encompass approximately 497 square feet on the north by north, I believe, pardon me, the north and east northeastern elevations. And then we have that pergola addition to the back, to the rear of the house at the southwestern elevations of that 170 square foot pergola. Here we have the floor plan, the proposed floor plan showing the construction of those, of the footprints of those construction elements. And then we have the existing and proposed north elevation to give you an idea of what's currently there with the pergola, and then the addition of that portal. Here we have the existing east elevation and the removal of the yard wall, kind of giving a better idea of exactly the rendering, kind of showing you what that portal addition, that pergola to portal addition will look like. Here's the existing and proposed south elevation, showing you the extent of that pergola addition, open roof system, wood beam, wood construction material. And then we have the existing and proposed west elevation showing the extent of that pergola. Given this application, staff recommends approval of the proposed project and finds that the application complies with section 14-5.2D, general design standards for all historic districts, and 14-5.2E, downtown and east side design standards. Thank you. Staff stands for questions.
Very much for the thorough presentation. Board members, does anyone have any questions? Mr. Drake? Not seeing any.
I do.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Is there any kind of cladding or protection on the back pergola proposed? Any kind of metal over the top of those beams?
Chair Bienvenue, Member Cherry, I believe the applicant is proposing copper drip edge protection for the wood beams.
Okay, on the portal that's on the southwest side, the pergola.
On the pergola, staff would ask the applicant to share that information to you.
Sure.
Thank you. Great question.
Any other questions? Okay. Maybe we have the applicant come to the podium and be sworn in.
Hello. Can you please raise your right hand, please? State your name and address for the record.
Acton, 1523 Tile Street.
Do you solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you have in reference to this item shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, and do this under the penalties of perjury? Thank you very much. Cherry's been sworn in.
To answer that question, yes, we usually like to put at a minimum on top of the pergola a galvanized cap, which you can't see. They just put a strip of time.
Pardon me, sir. Excuse me, Mr. Chair. Could you speak a little bit more directly? And that's good. Thank you.
How's this? A little better? Okay.
Better. Thank you.
Yeah, so we put a layer of usually anodized bronze colored cap on if it can't be visible. And so you won't see the cap on these because they're right on top of the beams. If it's exposed, we usually like to do copper. So otherwise, it's a straightforward project. We're not really asking for anything out of the realm of Pueblo style. So.
Very good. Do any members of the board have questions for the applicant? Anything else in addition? Satisfied? Okay, great. Are there members of the public in the room who wish to be heard on this application? Ms. Beninatto, please come to the podium.
State your name and address for the record, please.
Stephanie Beninatto, PO Box 1601, Santa Fe.
Thank you. Do you solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you have in reference to this item shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, and do this under the penalties of perjury?
I do.
Thank you. Chair, she's been sworn in.
I had some questions because in that first photo, there's those arrows going to the doors and the windows, and I wasn't sure whether those were put in without permission or why they were being pointed out. I'm also wondering why it is that I wonder how far away from the building the pergola is. And I wonder really, I know this might be out of your purview, but I think the square footage seems to be overwhelming on that lot, well more than even 50%. And I just wonder how that can really be allowed. And I'm not sure on the pergola, are you just talking about a metal on top of each of the pieces of wood to protect the wood, and not a sheet of metal over the wood, which would be almost a portal, but not attached? So these are some of my questions, and I would hope that some board member might ask the applicant those. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul, do you want to address any of those?
Chair Bienvenu, members of the board, Mrs. Benenato, thank you for asking those questions. So for the first one, here on the presentation, they're removing the glass sliding door, infilling it, restuccoing over, and then adding an additional window that currently exists on the property right by the other glass sliding door. It's I want to say it's a 2 feet by 1 foot window. It's a very small window on that facade. Now, for the zoning requirements, staff worked extensively with the applicant to address any of the zoning setback requirements. The applicant was able to address all of the zoning requirements, and the current planning team did sign off on his PZR. With his square footage, current planning and staff worked with the applicant to address that, and I believe they're right at they're right under the 40% square footage. So they're like at 38%. So they meet that requirement. But great, thank you for asking that. Chair Bienvenu, what was the other question? Sorry if I missed. Oh, the sheeting on top of the pergola will not be attached. It will be attached per beam. So I imagine 4-inch by 12-foot long stretches of metal on the beams to preserve each singular beam, but it will not be an extension of a whole entire roof. Just the preservation of the wood beams as best can. Chair Bienvenu, members of the board, Ms. Benenato, I believe that is a 4 to 5 foot from the main structure, but it's not attached to the structure, and they have within 6 inches or further to attach, but they're not attaching to the structure, and they meet the zoning requirement setbacks. So
Thank you for that. Does the applicant have anything they wish to add to any of the presentation and answers to questions given by staff? The applicant? No, anything to add?
No, we got approved with the PZR. We played by all of the city codes
Sure.
and rules, so we should be fine.
Okay. All right. Anyone else in the room that wish to be heard? Is there anyone online?
Chair Bienvenu, no.
All right.
No hands raised.
Back to the board. Are any board members have any further questions or comments? If there are no further discussions, may I have a motion? Ms. Aguilar Medrano, Member Aguilar Medrano.
Chair Bienvenu. I'd also like to thank the applicant. Your submittal was really clean and easy to understand, so thank you for all of that effort you put into it. In case number 2025-009941 HDRB at 416 Sosaya Lane, I move to approve the application as submitted.
Is there a second?
Either seconds.
Great. Is there any further discussion on this motion before I ask for a roll call vote? Seeing none, may I have a roll call?
Member Cherry,
Yes.
Member Mather,
Yes.
Member Dagnan,
Yes.
Member Aguilar Madrano.
Yes.
The motion has passed, Chair.
Thank you, and thank you to the applicant. Next item on the agenda is case number 2025-009943 HDRB at 925 Acequia Madre. Is the applicant in the room? Great. Mr. Duran, would you please proceed?
Chair Bienvenu, members of the board, in case number 2025-009943 HDRB 925 Acequia Madre is a single-family residence listed as contributing to the downtown and Eastside Historic District. The 904 square foot main residence was constructed in the late 1930s on a 0.15 acre lot. Architectural design style of the main residence is Santa Fe Pueblo Revival, as seen by the adobe block and wooden viga construction materials, flat roof and rounded parapets, and recessed doors and windows with divided lights. In November 26, 2022, the board approved a detached casita addition. In this application, the applicant is requesting that a portal addition in between the main residence, the main contributing residence, and the casita addition be constructed. Here we have on the northeast elevation of the courtyard and where this pergola will be constructed. Here at 925, the casita's east elevation, currently there is no work going to be taking place on here, but you can see the construction materials in the backdrop of what they're proposing to build the portal addition. Here is the 925 Acequia Madre main residence, the south facade. This is the primary facade of the structure. Here's a good overview photo of the courtyard, the casita addition, and the main residential structure. Here is where the 178 square foot portal addition will be constructed. Here is a 1984 HBI historic photo of the main structure. Here we can see in the 2005 aerial, the main residential structure, the construction of the yard wall to the south, the courtyard yard wall. There was a pergola previously constructed there that attached to the casita, which has now fell down and fell into disrepair. And now the applicant is proposing this 178 square foot portal addition to connect the two structures. So in the existing and proposed site plan, it shows the proposed portal addition in between the two main structures. Right now, it's just open space with flagstone flooring. Here we have the existing and proposed floor plans showing the extent of the addition of the portal. The portal will be detached. It will not be connected to either structure. And the roofing system, all the portal structure itself will be entirely wood, but the roofing system will be a translucent twin wall polycarbonate roof. So here we have the existing and proposed north elevation in between the main residential structure and the casita. Here we have the existing and proposed east elevations showing the extent of the portal addition in between the two structures. And I believe the drainage will be draining to the east. Here we have the existing and proposed south elevations from the casita and the existing and proposed west elevations showing the extent of the portal in between the two structures. And here we have the the facade diagram for 925 Acequia Madre. Staff recommends approval of the proposed project and finds that the application complies with section 14-5.2D, general design standards for all historic districts, and 14-5.2E, downtown and east side design standards. Thank you. Staff stands for questions.
Thank you for your presentation. Do board members have any questions for staff? Medrano.
Vice Chair Bienvenue. Did you have any discussion with the applicant about the clear roof? That's the only thing that strikes me as a little odd, and I'm wondering what the thought process was there.
Chair Bienvenue, Member Aguilar Medrano, great question. That polycarbonate clear roof, I don't think I've seen any in the historic districts. And it's not publicly visible. So staff was reviewing this application, given the location in between those two structures, there'll be no public visibility. And so I didn't see an issue with it. I could see there's other roofing material that can be probably more fit for the downtown and east side on a contributing structure on that parcel. And this type of material is, I don't know, it's different. And so given that, staff understands that it's not publicly visible, and so the impact is, there's no impact. But so he's presented to the board that we move to approve if the board sees fit.
Applicant might need to answer this too, but the profile of the proposed translucent roof, is that disguised by any beams or metal, or would we see that thickness of the clear roof?
Chair Bienvenue, Member Aguilar Medrano, I believe it'll be hidden underneath the parapets on the sides, covered by the parapets, and then wood beams would hold the structure, but the roofing would be on top. So there wouldn't be, I don't believe so.
Okay, maybe we'll have the applicant just clarify that when other board members are done with comments.
Thank you.
Well,
Any further questions or comments for staff? Seeing none, may the applicant please come to the podium and be sworn in.
Hello. Can you please raise your right hand, state your name and address for the record?
Gregory Waits, 925 Cayarco, Santa Fe, New Mexico, 87501.
Thank you. Do you solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you have in reference to this item shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, and do this under the penalties of perjury?
Do.
Thank you very much, Chair. He's been sworn in.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Waits. Is there anything that you would like to add to staff's presentation?
Yes, the translucent was to bring light to that area in that transition, so it wasn't continually in the dark. And because it's not like other than at 12 o'clock, 12 to probably 2, where the sun would be sort of penetrating that area in a severe way. As far as the visibility, the flashing system would cover all of the edge of that, so you wouldn't see anything out of the ordinary. You wouldn't know till you got underneath or tall that was in fact.
First, is there anything else you wanted to add? Before I turn it over to questions.
No, I was just trying to address the question
Sure.
in terms of the profile.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Yes, Member Degman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is more to staff, thank you. Do we have another example of this type of pergola with the translucent material on top of it? It just seems unusual to me. Maybe our newest member, who is a professional in the construction business, could speak to that a little bit. I mean to put you on the spot, but I don't know. Sorry.
That's fine. Yeah, I think what I'm hearing and what I would have curiosity about is how's the edge of that roof concealed? Which is that's what I'm hearing you're saying, is that if you're not
The
going to.
flashing system.
Okay, it goes over the edge.
flashing system that would go over the top of the panels,
Okay.
vent, come down.
So a metal flashing around the perimeter
Yes.
over the edge of the translucent panels.
Yes.
Yeah, so then what I'm hearing is that from because there's no detail here, so it's hard to understand that. But that there would be a metal drip edge of what I would assume we would want approved color, or that conceals, it covers, it closes off the end of that material, so you wouldn't be able to see the translucent material
Mhm.
from anywhere but from underneath or in the air.
Well, Scott, have you seen any of that in the historic district? Before- Done that way before?
I mean, is it like a polycarbonate composite, like two-wall greenhouse kind of
Exactly.
material?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not 100% sure is what I would say. I know there's some greenhouses,
Mhm.
and there's some historic greenhouses. My recollection is they're glass, but the ones that I've been in, but no.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Member Aguilar Medrano.
Vice Chair Bienvenue. Member Cherry is correct. I think this board has approved this material for greenhouses in the historic district, but I've only ever seen it for a greenhouse. I guess my thought is, if you would like light to be able to infiltrate into this space, why not use a more traditional method like Latia's? It's a main house and a casita, so it's not like it's a garage where someone is coming back and forth super frequently and they need that protection from the elements. So because it's a casita and a main house, I'm less inclined to approve this unusual material in this way, and would opt for something more traditional like Latia's if you want some open festration, or if you want something solid, we could talk about what that might be.
Latias would compromise the space that's available to make that profile, that section happen. So in other words, that would add an additional 4 inches on top of a roof. You would want a roofing system underneath that, right? So that would just, yeah, that would, and also just increase the cost on something that is functional more than heavy design. So I see it as functional and trying to keep the costs down and at the same time bring light in. I think if there was a happy medium, it could be that, the perimeter could be done in your typical roof, meaning wood decking, throw some, all of the waterproofing elements on top of that, and then cutting up these skylights or light areas to it. That could be an option. But I understand that they would want to have light in that area between the two houses. It's what they desired. So I address the client's needs, concern, or wishes, desires.
Member Aguilar Medrano, was there anything further before I turn to another board member?
No, I don't think so. Just pointing out that it's a contributing structure, which requires us to take a harder look than if it were non-contributing. So,
It is, in all honesty, it is just not visible from the street. And so, and it's not on the contributing side, it's just on sort of non-contributing. I don't see, I mean, as far as profile from what someone would see, they would see something that looked like your typical, pergola roof, or, or tall, that had drip edge flashing. Yeah.
Member Cherry.
What I like about that solution is if you're going to have a regular, say, Bry style roof and then add skylights, because my assumption is you're trying to protect it from the weather somewhat, you'd see the skylights would be more obtrusive than that flat material with this obstructed drip edge. So I like the the fact that you're using, that the material's flat, so it doesn't have a profile like a domed skylight, which would, if even not being visible from the street, but maybe some things that aren't really visible from the street have some tiny aspects. You won't see that with this. So I like that. I think my one question I have is it attached to the existing structures? Okay.
No.
And then
It's a self-supporting,
it's a freestanding.
freestanding.
Yeah. My only concern would be when I was on site, I noticed that there's drainage in that area that goes to the west and that the portal drains to the east and has a downspout with a gutter. So that water flow is going to have to move all the way back across,
Yeah.
against the footing of the contributing structure. So there's some concern that I don't have a problem with the structure. It's more like the water mitigation in regard to how it might degrade the contributing structure.
Yeah. I think that the permit set would definitely address any of those water-related issues, movement of water.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any further questions from the board at this time? Are there any members of the public that wish to speak on this application? Ms. Benenata, please come to the podium.
Stephanie Beninato. I really wish Ms. Rios was here for her institutional knowledge. First of all, a portal has to be attached to something. It's not freestanding. And you've had this discussion many times about how portals have to attach to a structure. And I think you should look up that definition before you decide that this is okay. Additionally, materials used are supposed to be in harmony with the existing style and structure, and this is not. The other thing is about using this kind of material. I do remember a greenhouse. I can't remember where it was, Canyon Road or maybe, Militar. I can't remember where it was, but they had this exactly kind of material and they had to remove it. And there was another discussion about a greenhouse and they had to put glass on the greenhouse. So I think you could, I liked Miss Member Aguilar Medrano's suggestion that you roof it over, attach it to one or the other of these structures, and so it will actually be a portal. And then you could use either some flat material, flat glass, or perhaps a low profile skylight. You could probably even use some of this material if it was small enough so it's not overwhelming, but still having a roofed area. Again, I think it's important, whether it's visible or not, that the material is in keeping with the structure itself to produce harmony within the structure. And again, I know from sitting here listening to this board that this kind of material has not been approved in the historic zone for roofing or for purposes of bringing light into some place. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who wish to be heard? Are there any members of the public online who wish to be heard? Thank you. Any further discussion on this application? Board members? Okay, yes, Member Aguilar Medrano.
Thank you, Vice Chair Bienvenue. I might have a question for staff. And also just to clarify, I don't like the idea of this becoming like a stucco parapet with skylights. I think that would be worse than what we're looking at. Ideally, what I would like to see is this be a true portal wood construction with something like Latia's. So I guess my question for staff is, I was looking quickly at the code. Do we have any guidance on breezeways like that? Because what I don't want to have, I don't think this should turn into a stucco parapet with skylights. I don't think would look right. Anything in the code that gives us guidance on that? Is it allowed in like a breezeway like that between a contributing and a casita?
Chair Bienvenue, Member Aguilar Medrano, I think what is the most important thing to remember here is that we do have a contributing structure. This doesn't completely attach those two buildings, but it does create the effect of attaching them. A more modern material does communicate that this is not part of a historic structure. And so, it would not overtake, for instance, the historic structure. As to the materials that are permitted in the downtown and East Side Historic District, the operating language is really relative to public visibility. And as to the flashing and all of that, if it was in an approved color, that might address that visibility of that particular installation. But yeah, this is a hard case. It's not good. Doesn't have any easy answer, but that's our perspective.
Thank you, Heather.
Yeah, I would like to add that as far as materiality, I mean, the columns are circular, and the supporting beams are, I don't think that anything of that is out of the ordinary for contributing structure. The only thing that's at question is the flat translucent roof. And as I said, the idea was that would not be seen by anyone other than people inside and underneath that structure. So I hear the objections, but at the same time, the objections actually have no relationship to visibility, what's being seen. That's what I'd like.
Thank you for that. If there's no further discussion, I would entertain a motion from the board. Anyone who wishes to make? For or against? Or Degman?
Mr. Chair, thank you. This is not a motion. Clearly, we are having a difficulty. We appreciate so very much your cooperation and intention. And the dilemma is what we just talked about ad nauseum. I don't need to repeat it. So I'm having a little bit of a problem with it. On the other hand, it cannot be seen, as you pointed out, from the street. Preservation is a gift to the community when it works for everyone well. And so I think we try to be accommodating within the parameters that we are obliged to honor as we consider these applications. I'm just making a comment. I don't think I want to make a motion yet. Maybe someone else does, but it is, Ms. Lamboy described, it is a difficult, well, it's not the end of the world, but it sets a tone, it sets a precedent. So we need to keep that in mind. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. I still need a motion. So the options are either to move to approve the application as submitted, move to deny the application, or move to approve the application with conditions. And finally, to move to continue to another date. So need one of those. Member Aguilar Medrano.
Thank you, Vice Chair Bienvenue. I don't motion yet. I'm sorry for the delay. I was looking in code, so perhaps I'll ask staff just to expedite this. I was looking for an area in the code. Do we have an area where materials should be harmonious, where it isn't specific to publicly visible portions? That's what I was looking at prior to me motion.
Yes, Chair Bienvenue, Member Aguilar Medrano. I was looking at the design standards for the downtown and East Side Historic District. the overall dominating effect is that it's wall dominated. And so, and also the sort of overall finishes be of an earth tone nature. And once again, that operative word is publicly visible. Facade of any building shall be of one color, which color shall simulate light or earth dark or dark earth color. And it discusses texture. So really it's sort of silent for not publicly visible facades. And once again, I would point out that keeping the integrity of the two historic structures and communicating that clearly through a different material might be a good approach in this particular case, so that we know going forward that the contributing structure and the casita were two different epochs or times of construction.
I have another question for the applicant. In the elevation proposed, what appears to be the north elevation, where I'm seeing these tapered rafters.
Again, I'm sorry.
It looks like, so you've got post and beam construction, right, with 4 round posts and then the horizontal beams that those are resting on those tops of those posts. And then there look to be what I would call some purlins that go from the longer posts, that span the longer posts. And then there's what I would call like a tapered rafter above that. Is that correct how I'm seeing that drawing? To create the pitch of the roof.
They would have to be over the beams, rippers.
Right. So those like the one on they rip to nothing. So you see what
It's been done.
what do you mean it's been done? It's been drawn?
Where you die the ripper at the beam before the last beam.
Okay, so above, like right at the inside edge of that beam where the rafter bears on the purlin, it's going to be like 1/8 of an inch or 1/2 an inch or something thick. Okay. So it's drawn as it would be represented. My feeling is
It's drawn as it's represented because one, as you can see, it's pretty tight in it. And two, because we would be sloping essentially the translucent over the ripper.
Right. Typically that ripper would have a minimum dimension at the end, like 1.5 inches or 3 inches or something like
Yeah.
that. But your intention is to just rip it to 0.
Actually,
That-
I'm going to be honest, as you probably well know, doing design detailing, is that would all get worked out in the permits.
Right.
But what I'm showing here is that it's quite feasible. And if I have to move something down an inch to accommodate a ripper that a contractor requires.
Okay. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure those weren't steel or something because they're
No, they're
ripped
not
down
steel.
to like a very narrow profile. So, okay. No.
Thank you, Vice Chair Bienvenue. I may have a solution. I think what I'm hearing from this board is everyone's a little bit on the fence because we want to, I think, accommodate this, but it's also dealing with a contributing structure. It's on Estancia Madre, one of the most, prominent streets. And I think we still have a lot of questions about this profile. I think that's what this really hinges on. We need confirmation that this translucent roof truly would be invisible at both ends. So my motion would be to propose this case until the next hearing and would ask you to provide a more zoomed in detail of how this translucent piece of material interacts with the flashing, just so the board can feel more confident that it won't be visible from any side in the profile. So
Should I make a
Yep.
motion?
Second.
Let the motion get made first and then.
Sorry.
Let me, Heather, would the next date be amenable for the city if I propose that? Which would
Yes.
be April 8th.
Yes, that's correct. That's the date.
Is the applicant okay if I propose that date? Or would you like me to leave it open-ended?
Better.
Okay, that's what I figured. All right. In case number 2025-009943-HDRB at 925 Acequia Madre, I move to postpone the case until the next hearing on April 8th and ask that the applicant provide at least one construction detail of the roof profile to indicate that the translucent material edge will not be visible.
Second.
Any further discussion before we vote? None, I would ask for a roll call.
Member Cherry,
Yes.
Member Aguilar Madrano,
Yes.
Member Mather,
Yes.
Member Dagnan.
Yes.
The motion has passed, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, applicant. Great. Next case on the agenda is case number 2025-009946 HDRB at 329 Otero Street. Mr. Duran is the applicant in the room.
Chair Bienvenue, members of the board, yes, sir.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair Bienvenue, members of the board. In case number 2025-009946 HDRB, 329 Otero Street, the single-family residence is the single-family residence is listed as contributing to the downtown and east side historic district, with the north, south, and west facades designated as primary. The structure is a modest 1,048 square foot structure constructed between 1935 to 1936 in the territorial revival architectural design style, as seen by the adobe block construction material, brick coping, stretcher dental stretcher courses, and entry porch facing Otero Street to the west. There was an addition to the southern portion of the structure in 1945. Now, on September 10th, 2024, this case came before the board, and the board adopted staff's recommendation that the exception criteria has not been met for the replacement of historic windows, and that the request is therefore denied on the primary facades, but that all other aspects to the application be approved with a friendly amendment to the non-historic, non-primary facade windows that to clarify, replacement of the windows shall not be vinyl as it says in the packet, and that the windows shall be wood windows as accepted. This motion passed unanimously with the full board. Now, this application has come before the board today in almost in complete entirety the same. The only difference is from vinyl windows, they're looking at wood-clad windows. However, in the design set that the applicant had provided in the Anderson design says vinyl material in the wood-clad windows. So staff has some concerns about what they're proposing on installing and replacing these historic windows with, again, vinyl material in the description of the windows. Now, 3 of the facades are primary. In the assessment by Ray Patterson, I believe C through I are all historic windows and are repairable. Now, non-historic windows on non-primary facades can be replaced. And the board made that motion. Now we're coming again before the board, same exact case, almost to the T of the same information. Now, staff given what the board has already seen, and given the motion that the board's already made, staff is recommending the same recommendation that the historic architect made, that all historic windows be repaired and that non-historic windows that are unrepairable be replaced. So given that, staff finds that the exception criteria have not been met and recommends denial of an exception to replace historic windows on the primary facades of the contributing structure. And staff stands, thank you. Staff stands for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Duran. So the question I have then is, if this has already been reviewed by the board pursuant to an application, findings of fact and conclusions of law have been entered denying the request to replace the historic windows on the primary facades in kind. What is different about this application that it would allow it to be heard a second time? My concern, of course, is that if we permit that to take place, reapplying and asking for the same relief that was sought in the first application, that could extend indefinitely. There'd be no prohibition on someone continuing to ask for the same thing until they finally got a board that might approve it. And certainly that's not a procedure. Normally we consider a case that's been resolved to be resolved if it hasn't, especially if it hasn't been appealed to the governing body. So this is a question to you and I suppose to the city attorney's office as well, is how can the board hear this case at all if it's essentially the same application that the board has already issued a decision on?
Chair Bienvenue, thank you for eloquently stating that. Staff did discuss this with the city attorney, and the direction was that the due process for the applicant needs to be met. And the applicant, we need to meet the applicant in that. However, the city attorney did not agree with that. They recommend that this case, given the state that the findings of facts and conclusions of law have been entered, that this case should not come before. But we, as staff, stand thoroughly that the applicant, giving her due process, come before the board. And if she so deems, if the board makes the same determination that was given 8 months ago, she has the opportunity to appeal to the governing body, and then we can move that forward. Okay.
So if I understand what you're saying, that's staff's position, but the city attorney has a different point of view. And is that right? Is that what you were expressing?
Chair Bienvenue, members of the board, that is correct.
Okay, so at this time, I'd like to hear from the city attorney.
Chair
Sure.
Bienvenue, we, Assistant Director Moore and I took a look at this when the application came in. And we looked at the review and approval procedures found under section 14-3 regarding rehearing of the existing same case. And unfortunately, only in the case of rezonings is there a time frame in which an identical application cannot be resubmitted. Is this something we need to fix in the code? Yes, but this is how the code is written right now. So as of now, when it comes to any other development approvals, such as that with the Historic Districts Review Board, there is no a minimum time frame before it can be reheard by the board. And so that is why, from that perspective, staff is of the opinion that it is compliant with code if they were to reapply. But I know the esteemed attorney's office also has some perspective, so let him speak now.
Sure, I appreciate that point of view. And now I'd like to hear from the city attorney.
Thank you, Chair Bienvenue and members of the board. I will have to say the question as to whether or not legal principles like res judicata or collateral estoppel apply to hearings before a land use board are not necessarily decided with specificity. That is to say, I could not find a case that decides those issues when it comes to an application to a land use or a historic district review board. in a case that's parallel to this particular one. I did find a case where a historic district review board case that was taken to a district court. The doctrine of res judicata was applied, and the case was thrown out at the district court level as to whether or not the land use board could have heard it all over again. That wasn't necessarily answered. Just the concern I have is that I don't see anything under due process principles that requires the same hearing to be made twice if the board has already made that decision. And it also seems that if the code prohibits somebody from appealing more than once, it seems that if their opportunity to appeal came and went and they didn't appeal, essentially what they're doing is applying to the board yet a new finding of fact so they can appeal when they a decision that they could have appealed the first time but didn't. So I'm concerned that this sets a bad precedent. I do find that the doctrine of res judicata, as I said, with respect to land use hearings that have gone to a district court, is respected in the state of New Mexico, but that doesn't necessarily answer the specific question here. So I think it's an open question. I'm just concerned about that precedent that this.
Sure. I mean, we obviously, I mean, it would be an absurd interpretation of our land use code to nullify the deadline for filing an appeal, which is what this would do. Because under the interpretation staff has given, there would never be an appellate deadline because you could indefinitely continue to file a new application and reset the clock every time. That could just literally can't be the proper interpretation in my mind, unless we're going to find the code to have an absurd provision embedded in it. So that's my main concern. And I think that proceeding with a decision tonight would in effect reset the clock, which I do not think should happen in this case unless it is clear, as opposed to being ambiguous, that that is the only proper procedure for the board to undertake. So at the very minimum, I would suggest that the board should continue this matter if it doesn't feel it has sufficient information to decide how to proceed. Yes, Member Decknett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There is no one here representing the ownership tonight. Is that correct?
We haven't asked yet.
You have someone here? Okay. And about due process, we've been hearing a lot about due process if you turn on the television these days. It seems to me that due process was executed and received. So my opinion is if that is the case, and our attorney has just confirmed that, I don't even know why we're hearing it. Thank you.
Any other comments from the board? Yes, Member Cherry.
Yeah, I have a question for Director Lamboy and probably the applicant and for Planner Duran. So my experience historically is that if a application comes for the city and is denied, it can be reapplied for if significant change is made to that application. I mean, that's been, and I heard what you just said about what's written. That's been my experience of what's been practiced is if there is significant change, the case can be re-brought before the board with those changes. And what I'm not super clear on, but I think I'm hearing is that this was brought forward with vinyl windows, and now that it's identical, but the change that was made was that it changed to an aluminum clad wood window as a replacement in place of what was originally proposed as a vinyl window.
Chair Bienvenue, Member Cherry, that is correct.
Okay. And then the other factor that I'm hearing is that the windows that are there have been deemed by the assessor as restorable. So it's still proposing to replace a repairable window.
Chair Bienvenue, Member Cherry, that is correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Bienvenue and members, I think it might be important to review the conclusions of law that the board made in findings of fact that were approved January 14th for a hearing that took place September 10th. There are windows A, B, and F. A is on the east elevation, and door number 1 and window A, north elevation, door number 2, window B, west elevation, door number 3, and south elevation, window F, were all deemed to be non-historic or not on a primary facade. The board approved a re-stucco of the entire structure. The board denied an exception sought by the applicant, denying replacement of historic windows on the north, west, and south facades. Those were windows C, D, E, G, H, and I. And then replacement of the windows which was approved, which were the non-historic windows on the non-primary facades, were subject to the condition that the replacement window shall have wood and not vinyl frames. So I believe if the applicant is presenting non-vinyl frames on non-historic and non-primary facades, the board may wish to consider that. But it seems to me that it's a settled matter that the historic windows on the primary facades, which required an exception, that exception was denied.
Right, on the basis not because of the replacement material, but because the windows were repairable. And so the changing the window material does not change the application and material manner in my mind. Or the board's decision. Yes, Director Lamboy.
Yes, thank you, Chair Bienvenue. Certainly, like I mentioned, the code needs to be fixed. And so it's our obligation, not looking just at the historic districts ordinance, but also looking at the other components of the code relative to submission of applications. It has been our practice that it must be significantly different. The question was posed to us whether that could be resubmitted, and you know, it is not significantly different. It does get closer to the overall intent of having the same appearance and the like. Although the packet is that the applicant submitted is contradictory between the detail that was provided and what was written in the letter. So there's a lot of concerns here, and I also understand what you're saying. Well, the clock would not stop ticking forever, and you know that is an accurate representation. So that's sort of the perspective of our determination, but we are happy to defer to the city attorney's office and this board as to the proper decision.
Yeah, I mean, my personal solution to that would be to continue this matter and let the staff and city attorney work out a solution to this problem, because again, the board hearing the matter has consequences. Even if it's denied, that has consequences. The board should not enter into that process unless it's quite certain that there are no other available options, and it's required to hear this matter again. It looks like
Chair
Mr. Graham may
Bienvenue.
have another comment.
Chair Bienvenue, members of the board, it's come to our attention that Member Mather has left and she is no longer here. Will that still constitute a quorum?
Yes.
She gone for the evening, are you saying?
Yes.
Yes, Chair.
She had to
We still have a quorum.
attend to a matter.
Still have a quorum, don't we?
We still have.
Yeah.
Thank you for the information, though. Okay, where are we at? First of all, any further comments by the board on this matter before I proceed?
I'd like to make a motion.
Um,
If it's premature, I can wait.
yeah, let me ask about that. If there were a motion to continue this matter to a later date, can that be made now, or do we need to hear from the applicant and the public first?
Well, in light of the fact that the conclusion of the staff and the city attorney upon further research might compel the board to decide not to hear this case again. I think that legal matter should be decided and the hearing should be continued.
Without first hearing from the applicant or the public at this time,
I believe,
or at least it's not necessary.
I believe so.
I thank you for that. So yes, we could have a motion from the board at this time, if that's the pleasure of the board. Ms. Deckman,
Thank you.
Member Deckman,
I will make an attempt at what I understand needs to happen. And that is, I'd like to make a motion that we not proceed on this case. I don't know how to word it because it's unusual. Mr. Chair, can you help me here?
well, my suggestion would be that you move to continue this to a later date without a date known at this time. It will not be a date certain, and I think that's acceptable under the circumstances. To allow staff and the city attorney's office to reconvene to discuss whether or not this matter can be heard by the board. And secondarily, whether it must be heard by the board. And then based on that determination to either reschedule this for a further hearing or deem the application closed.
Well, in the spirit of working with our friends and neighbors in the community, perhaps the second option you just outlined is the way to go. And that is to not close it down, but to have the city attorney come back and clarify. Am I saying that correctly, Mr. Rubley? Is that what you'd like to do?
That's sufficient. Yes, we
Okay. Thank you.
and clarify after a discussion with the staff.
If I get a second, we can proceed on that.
Yeah. And I guess the way I would frame that, as I just did, if it's acceptable to the moving members as well as staff in the city attorney's office, is that a determination be made by staff in conjunction with the city attorney's office that this matter either should be rescheduled for consideration by the board or deemed to be withdrawn. So that we wouldn't hear about it again if the second decision is made.
Yes.
Yes,
Staff in the city attorney's office as well.
I second the motion.
Well, you're making the motion. I have to be careful.
But you just said it so well, Counselor.
Is there a second?
Aguilar Madrano, second.
All right. Any further discussion on the motion that's been made? None, I'll take a roll call vote.
Member Cherry? Member
Yes.
Aguilar Madrano?
Yes.
Member Degnan?
Yes,
Motion has passed, Chair.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And we'll just wait to hear from staff in the city attorney's office. I presume we'll hear by whether or not it gets rescheduled for a hearing at a future date.
So we will do that.
Thank you. Okay, so the next matter and final matter for applications is case number 2025-009947 HDRB at 214 Old Santa Fe Trail. Is the applicant in the room? Yes. Please proceed, Mr. Duran.
Chair Bienvenu, members of the board, thank you for being here this evening. In case number 202, in case number 2025-009947 HDRB 214 Old Santa Fe Trail is listed as a contributing structure with the north facade designated as primary to the downtown and east side historic district. The original structure was built post 1912 in the vernacular architectural design style as seen by the wood frame and stucco construction materials, recessed doors and windows, and 4/1 historic windows on the north facade. The original structure was a modest residential home and converted into a commercial storefront in the 1940s. A two-story apartment addition was added to the structure in the early 1970s. The structure was given contributing status in 1984 with primary facade designation in 2021. The structure has undergone several additions to the eastern and western facades, changing the original design. However, the structure's northern and southern facades are relatively intact, showing the original fenestration, construction materials, and architectural style of the structure. Chair Bienvenu, members of the board, in this case at 214 Old Santa Fe Trail, this has been a long ongoing process for approximately 2 years. The applicant has been working diligently for the property owners, and in stating that, there's some general things we need to clear up. So as I go through these videos, I'm going to share with you some work that has been done without a construction permit, without Historic Districts Review Board approval, and generally illegally. So here on the north primary facade, we have a low-hanging planter wall. This wall extends 3/4 of the duration of that facade, and it abuts out about 2.5 feet out, stands about 2.5 feet tall, and varies throughout, it varies in undulation throughout that facade as it heads east. This was done sometime in between the early to mid 2000s into around 2023. The original date of the construction is unknown. Here's a view looking eastwards towards the Loretta Chapel, as you can see in the background. And currently it holds, not necessarily as a planter or landscape, a low landscape planter, but relatively holding merchandise and artwork and so forth. With that, we can see here on the east elevation, which has been quite a concern, is that the public visibility. So here is the original storefront. You have the French doors opening, the recessed plate glass window underneath the portal. Here's the east elevation as built. So what the owners did was they took out those the French doors and that plate glass window, installed plate glass doors and window and another plate glass window underneath the portal. Now, it's important to note that these doors are not in keeping with the historic with 14-5.2 E design standards under E. Windows can be, but doors are not allowed, as well as the windows go straight to the ground. Now, generally in the downtown and east side historic district, there's been required an exception in order for the windows to go straight to the ground and so forth. So the rule for that one would be the 3-foot rule. Now, as you can see on this east elevation, there's also a middle gate. Now, wrought iron is allowed, given across the street at the Loretto Chapel, there's wrought iron, but here is a 10-foot tall steel gate. And any middle gates that are in the downtown and east side historic district need to come to the board for approval for Santa Fe style for non-conforming material for approval. So these gates do not meet code standard. There's another view of the gates. Here's the as-built low planter wall on the south property line that abuts next to the south. And here we also notice there needs to be some ADA accessibility, a handrail in order to clear those steps. Here you can see the gate, the undulation on that south facade, the middle gate on that south elevation. Here we have the existing elevation to the rear. In the rear, there was a fire that took place a few years back, and here's the remodel of that area. Again, here is a remodel of that area where the fire damage took place. Now, here is from a previously HCPI form from Mr. Murphy, showing the structure in 1975. Here we have that north facade. That north facade has not been, no work has been done on that facade. It still holds true to that, except that low planter. The windows, the 3/1 wood frame windows, still the same as it was then as it is today. Here's a photo that Mr. Murphy provided from the HBI survey showing the portal, showing those territorial style wood beams on that north facade. Nothing had changed that north primary facade, as well as that rock lining wall for the parking. And that came in discussion at the site visit, but that rock wall had been there for some time already, as well as the wrought iron across the windows. Now, here's some concerns that came across staff during some site visits recently. Now, on August 25th, 2029, the board approved the construction of 3-foot tall pilasters in front of the structure at the eastern facade, with the condition that they be stuccoed with cementitious stucco and confirmed by staff. Currently, the pilasters have stationary glass cases with exterior rock work and not cementitious stucco. Second, we have the glass door on the north elevation that's not called out in the design set proposal letter. Then we have the signage needs to be reviewed and approved by current planning. We also have the hardscape that needs to be reviewed and approved by terrain management. The height of the existing black metal fence and gate is a maximum allowable height of 8 feet. Currently, that gate stands above that. The windows touch the base of the ground and need an exception. The handrail ADA compliant on the south elevation needs to exist. So here's some concerns that just were brought up today while we were walking the site. So in that, we have the original site plan. Now, here's the as-built site plan. In that as-built site plan, the door, that glass door needs to be called out. The low planter along this would need an exception to a primary facade. You have the portal, that low planter on the southern facade, and then the pilasters. Here we have the original first floor plan. Here we have the as-built first floor plan. Same call outs. Here we have the original north elevation, as-built north elevation. That low planter wall really impacts that primary facade. The original east elevation and as-built elevation, these plate glass windows on 214 Old Santa Fe Trail impact the entire streetscape. Whether you look to La Fonda, whether you look at the Loretto Chapel, whether you look at the Hotel Santa Fe, whether you look at all the other structures along that streetscape. And what this does is set a precedence of, well, we'll do things illegally, we'll do things without a permit, we'll do things without approval, and then we'll come back for approval. And now we need to set precedence that this is unacceptable. So we have the original condition of the rear north elevation, as-built condition of the rear north elevation. We have the as-built east rear south elevation and the original east rear elevation. No changes. Here we have the as-built rear north elevation and the original east rear north elevation that's called out by the applicant of the new glass doors. The glass doors need to be called out. So given this and the other neighboring property at 216 Old Santa Fe Trail, staff finds that all the exception criteria have not been met and recommends denial of the application as it does not comply with 14-5.2D general design standards for all historic districts and 14-5.2E downtown and east side design standards. Thank you. Staff stands for questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Duran, for that presentation, which was very thorough. I'm just trying to make sure that we know exactly what's being presented here tonight. If you could just go back really quickly to, I think you were showing the rear glass door that's facing the street. And I don't think that's before us tonight. It looked like it used to have a divided light door and now Yeah,
Chair
that's it.
Bienvenu, yes.
Is that before us tonight?
Chair Bienvenu, members of the board, all of it's before us tonight. That would be as well.
Okay. So the applicant is asking for approval after the fact of, well, first of all, I should establish that, were those approved? Was that change approved that we're looking at right now at that rear door?
Chair Bienvenu, members of the board, no, sir.
So the applicant is also asking for retroactive approval from the board for that, as well as the front facade on the street.
That is correct. Yes, sir.
Just want to be clear. So, and the way you presented the case, you've divided up the requests for exceptions into two categories. One is the planter on the primary facade. And maybe are there two planters on that facade? Look like, and
Chair Bienvenu, members of the board, there's a planter on the north primary facade, and that's where they would need an exception.
right, but was there more than one planter on that facade? And when we were on site today, I thought that they're connected, so we consider that one planter for the whole length of the facade.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So that's one, and then secondarily, you're asking the board to consider whether the exception criteria have been met for the metal gate and the windows and doors on the northern facade. And those seem to me a little bit different, but I think you're putting them together into one category because of the fact that they're on the same facade. Is that the idea?
Chair Bienvenu, members of the board, yes, sir. Instead of sending 5 exceptions, we're just asking for that on that east elevation under 14-5.2E downtown and east side design standards. So the middle gate would have to come before the board for downtown and east side design standards.
Sure.
The glass, the 3-foot rule, those doors, the glass doors and window, those would need to come before the board for approval for 14-5.2E,
Right.
little e. So instead of we'll just put it all under one 14-5.2E,
Yeah.
downtown and east side design standards, and address those for the windows and the middle gate.
Okay. I mean, I guess I see why you've done it that way, to try to simplify things, but they do seem to be, to me, to raise different considerations and trying to decide what exception criteria have been met for those two design features. But at any rate, that's fine. Just want to clarify for the board, those are the two groupings of exception requests that are before the board tonight. The other thing I just wanted to point out was you did a very thorough job of describing the ways that staff believes that these changes do not conform to the code requirements for the district. I don't think you also mentioned, though, one that I also think applies, which was the general design standards for all districts under subsection D. And that has two, I think, important provisions that pertain here, which relate to alterations. One is that no alterations to a contributing structure to be made that could cause it to lose its contributing status. That's something the board needs to take into account here in deciding whether or not to approve retroactively these changes, whether or not it would still be a contributing structure, because if so, the board is not permitted to approve them. The second is that no alteration of features and spaces that embody the status shall be made. And that's a standalone mandate, separate from all of the other ones that you've brought up about the design standards. And that, I think, I've always read that provision to be broader than the primary facade. The primary facade designation does not necessarily encompass all the features and characteristics that make a building contributing. In fact, we often wrestle with that because we have reasons to believe that lots of facades have important characteristics, but we're cognizant of the fact that if we start designating every single elevation as a primary facade, it would be impossible for anyone to ever be able to modify the house. So I just think it's important to clarify that an owner is not permitted to alter characteristics that embody the contributing status, even on non-primary facades, such as the eastern facade here. So that's just something I wanted to point out for benefit of the board in considering the application. Does anyone else on the board have any comments, questions for staff before we proceed to the app? Not at this time. I guess I do have one more question for staff. So you brought up a few other issues that you think are violations. In this case, the pilasters in the front that were required to be stuccoed and are not, and then the permanent glass cases that were attached to those pilasters where the original application, according to the packet, said that those were removable and would only be on site during the day, during working hours. So is that something before us tonight, or is that something you're just bringing to us for informational purposes?
Chair Bienvenu, members of the board, I believe all of it's coming before the board tonight. Now, in particular, these are just observations staff had at the site visit. And in general, it may change tomorrow, to be quite honest. So we don't know what will take place on that property, but currently these are some red flags that popped up to staff today while we were out at the site visit and just sharing that.
Okay.
There's some issues here that are ongoing that are just this precedence of doing illegal work without city approval or board approval and not in keeping with what they've been approved to do. They're doing not that. And so these are just some concerns that were brought up today that the board and the public and staff needs to know, and that's taking place. And
so it's not necessarily something that would be, well, I mean, I'll leave it up to the board whether they want to incorporate any of those concerns into findings if they find them relevant to what's being requested of them. Thank you for that. Member Aguilar Medrano.
Thank you, Vice Chair Bienvenu. I guess my comments are related, so I'll go ahead and just make my comments now. Mr. Padilla, you are in a tough position, and I know that. So, and I know that this application doesn't represent your practices. So please, my comments are not directed towards you. You are in a tough position, and I don't envy it. Speaking of the pilasters, I also noticed those actually just today. I hadn't read the entire application as far as the history. But those caught my eye as something that I wouldn't expect that the board would approve those. So as I was looking through, I find that it was another red tagged case in 2009 for those pilasters, where the owner came back to the board asking for retroactive approval like they are tonight. And the board was rather gracious that night and decided to grant it with a condition that there would be cementitious stucco, and the owner never did that either. So as far as I'm concerned, the pilasters are not, they're not compliant. And so I think that's on the table. And my understanding is that when an application comes before the board and something's not compliant, that we have the ability to request that it be brought up to code. So I think this is a dance that we've clearly been doing since 2009. Sometimes we do see applications that are red tagged and owners who genuinely, it was a mistake and they didn't realize. I just nominated a project tonight for the historic award that was red tagged. And so not holding that against this project at all, some people genuinely make a mistake and the board recognizes that. And I think we're always trying to work with them. This case, and one of the ones we heard last time, is not one of those. I'm sure this has been happening before 2009, but just quickly looking, I can see that we've been having this back and forth since then, and I can't see a way that we're gonna approve any of these changes tonight. And thank you for your thoroughness, Paul.
When was this work red tagged?
Chair Bienvenu, members, Cherry, I believe this work was originally red tagged in 2023.
Okay, the work that we're looking at right now.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and the photos in the application, when were those taken?
Now, these photos vary. Some are more recent than others. This bottom photo these photos here of the original structure came in 2022, 2023. These ones came in 2024.
What about photo 10 in the application?
Tim. Chair Bienvenu, member Cherry, is this photo 10 on yours?
Let me look. It's a photo of the door on the, let me see. No. Photo 10 is on page 29.
It's a door. Is it? My presentation slides would may be a little different. Could you give me a description, sir?
It's the back door facing the, right at the end of the stairs on the north side.
So staff has the design set, but does not have the,
Oh, it's a photo from the Hickby. So it says right there, May 22nd, 2024. Would that be correct that that photo was from May 22nd?
Chair Bienvenu, member Cherry, that's correct.
And it was red tagged in September of 23?
My understanding was October 2023, but I could be wrong.
Members of the board, I believe it was last year sometime that it was given a notice of violation, 2024.
And the only previous notice of violation was in 2009?
Chair Bienvenu, member Cherry, that's a great question. I would have to do more research and to find that. But if anybody were to give a red tag within the last 20 years, it would have been our manager, Gary Mokino.
I don't recall that red tag, but
Okay,
it's there.
thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, member Cherry. Anything else from the board before we ask the applicant to come forward? Oh, Director Makino, yes.
Chair Bienvenu and members of the board, I would also like to talk about section 14-5.2C, regulation of significant and contributing structures. And it's under section F for restoration of status. If a property owner makes changes to a structure without the proper city approval, which results in lowering the structure status, staff or board may require the property owner to restore the structure such as that the former status is restored.
Great. Yes, I agree that applies. So that's something that the board can actually order, has the authority to order beyond just denying an application. Thank you. Anything else? Okay, the applicant, please step forward and be sworn in.
Please raise your right hand. State your name and address for the record.
John Padilla, P.O. Box 22986, Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Thank you. Do you solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you have in reference to this item shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, and do this under the penalties of perjury?
I do.
Thank you, sir. Chair, he's been sworn in.
Thank you very much. Good evening. Would you like to add anything to staff's presentation?
Chair Benvenu, yes, I would like to request that the York District's inspector clarify the date of the violation most recently issued for this 214 Old Santa Fe Trail.
Chair Bienvenu, members of the board, Anthony Maestas, our historic inspector, gave the citation April 12th, 2024 for the citation.
Okay. Thank you.
Further?
Chair Benvenu and members of the board. I'm here before you tonight to clarify a couple of items. One is that the referenced red tag or violation from 2009 has nothing to do with the current owner. The current owner has only had the property since about 2022. It's only had it for 2 years. So I know that violation is in the packet. The packet also references, staff also represented a habitual practice that my owner has undergone since he has owned the property. I wanted to make it very clear that the previous violations had nothing to do with the current owner. And I understand those boxes, jewelry boxes or cases out in front of the property, how H Board would have approved that back in 2009. I have no idea, but it has nothing to do with the case before you tonight. The other thing that I'd like to bring to your attention is a number of the items that staff member Duran has presented this evening are items that I was not aware of. The list that was presented earlier, would you go to that list, please? The 7 points that are on here are items that are not part of the submittal that I have before you this evening because I wasn't aware that historic district's purview was terrain management. Didn't know that other items such as the glass door. The glass door has always, item number 2, has always been in the application, has always been part of our submittal. The other thing that I want to make clear is that the reason that north door that is not part, it's called the north glass door in the north elevation is not called out in the design set. It's not in the north elevation. It is in the east elevation on the north side of the building. So to call it the north elevation is incorrect. It is the east elevation on the north side of the primary facade. I already mentioned the 2009 case, item number 1, had nothing to do with my client. Signage, yes, there is current signage that is there. We had never been told that the signage was in violation. The signage that is there has been there historically, so I'm wondering why that is an item that is now before you as an item of concern from historic staff. Item number 4, the hardscape. The hardscape is a attempt by the owner to repair spalling concrete that is on the ground, the walking surface for the public, coming back in with the substitution for hard tile, larger formatted tile, to be able to provide a safe travel distance for travel path for customers and the public approaching the building. The height of the existing fence was referenced as 10 foot tall by staff. It is not 10 foot tall. It's about 7 foot tall at its highest point. Windows touching the ground requires an exception. That's what is before you this evening. ADA handrail. I didn't realize that we were dealing with ADA accessibility handrail. The south, where the gate is on the south side. It's a non-public access point. So therefore, accessibility is not an issue there. Access is through the main door that is and has accessibility through the through the current building. So I'm before you this evening to work with historic staff and to work with the Historic Design Review Board. My owner has made it very clear to me that he is not here to ask for any special exceptions or any special attention. His tenant made these changes. His tenant made the changes for the front east non-primary elevation. The changes of the door on the what was called out as the 2-story apartment that was added to this building, those changes were added because of a fire that was started by homeless that entered through the south side of the building, hidden from the public, through the doors, the green door and the window that was there, entered there, started a fire in that back building that engulfed the downstairs area. So the doors that were replaced on the north side or the east elevation, north side of the primary facade were changed because of a fire. It wasn't changed because of a desire to just put brand new doors in. My client understands that these were done without a building permit. But to get to a building permit, we have to come before you first to get approval. We understand that it is asking, and not asking for forgiveness, but asking that the Historic Design Review Board work with us to get to a point, to get an approval so that we can submit for a permit for what we've proposed or what we agree needs to be the proposal. The other thing that's brought out is exceeding the glass that's in the storefront, that it's not allowed in the district. It does clearly say that if it is under a portal, it can exceed the 36-inch dimension. Unless I understand it, or I am not understanding the rule correctly, my understanding is that a larger glass openings are allowed below a portal. It has clearly been stated multiple times by myself and by staff that that east facade has a portal. Photos were shown of the existing portal dating back a number of years. That portal has been there ever since I was familiar and I was engaged in this project working for this client. So I'm before you tonight to work something out. I want to get to a point where I can submit a permit for review and approval. And Member Aguilar Medrano, thank you very much for your statement earlier. As you know, this is not how I operate. My client had contacted me to assist him in remedying the problem that was created by a tenant unbeknownst to him. The work was done. We need to fix this. We need to make it right. And we're before you this evening to go over that. You know, the metal gate is something that has been called out as not really being in the district. Well, it's right across the street. Metal is used. Yes, I know it's wrought iron. And just adjacent to us to the north, where the low rock wall in the parking lot is, the gallery on the corner has tall wrought metal gates, has tall iron work there. So to say that it doesn't exist in the streetscape, I beg to differ. The Chair Benvenu, I agree with you. The landscaping was identified as or the low walls were identified as an item that we should discuss clearly. And then the gate and the windows and doors are thrown in the same category. I'd like to discuss them individually if possible to try to get to a solution this evening. It was stated that those landscape walls, the low landscape walls, did not have any landscape in them. Well, the pictures clearly show that there is landscaping in there. You know, granted, it's minimal. They do utilize it for showing their product. It's done all over the district. You know, product is shown, well, in the commercial sections of the district. You know, the landscape areas, they do show their product to the public. It's important that the public be able to see what they have to draw them in. Yes, the north facade has the landscape planters that were added. We'd like to get to a point. We did not feel that the historic integrity or the primary facade that was called out as a north facade was damaged by the low wall, because you still see the architectural elements that are called out and were historic that continue to be there even from the older, I believe, 1975 photo that was shown, those openings are still there. They're still there. They just there is now a low landscape wall in front of that. Granted, it was built without a permit. It was built without a review and approval by the board. So we're here before you to discuss that, to talk about that, and hopefully get to a point to where we can, have a resolution that works for my client, works for the public, works for the district. Mentioned the fire. The low walls, it was called out on the north wall, but there are other low walls and they are abutting the 216 that is our neighbor to the south. Those walls are abutting that area. They are not up against the south wall of the building that is also a non-primary facade. With that, I stand for questions, and I stand ready to work with the board, work with the staff to find a solution that works. We're looking for some help. We want to be responsive. We want to present a project that can be reviewed, approved, get to a building permit, and we get on down the road. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick questions. So you've sort of brought up on numerous occasions the issues of ownership and who was involved and who wasn't involved. So I've heard you say the owner who you're representing today was not the owner in 2009.
Correct.
But was the owner when these changes were made that are before us tonight, correct?
Correct.
And you've said he did not approve of these changes. Is that your testimony?
Correct.
He had no knowledge of them?
He is the tenant. The tenant made the change.
I'm asking, did he have any knowledge of these changes?
Not aware of that. He's told me he did not approve them.
Who's the tenant?
Tenant is Wild Horse. I don't work for the tenant, so I don't know his name.
So is it a business called Wild Horse, or is that a corporate name?
I don't know. I don't work for the
Okay,
tenant.
you've never worked with them at all? You don't know who that is?
Well, I know it's Wild Horse.
You've never met the tenant?
Oh yeah, I've met him because
Who
I've
is-
had to go in there.
Who is it?
Who is it? His first name is Jack.
Jack what?
No idea. I don't work for him.
I know. You've met him, but you've never, all you know is his name is Jack.
Yeah, and I've never worked with him.
Okay. But your client is saying he's responsible for this unauthorized work, correct?
Is correct, sir.
And you don't know of anyone else who did the work? Who was the contractor?
I was brought in to help them with the situation that was created for the owner.
No, I understand that you weren't the contractor or the architect, right? But
Correct.
Who was?
Don't know.
No knowledge of that?
No, sir.
You've never inquired your client?
Chair Benvenu, I don't know what you're trying to get me to.
You have
state.
raised the issue of ownership and
Correct.
who is the innocent parties here, and conveniently, the guilty parties are not in the room where we can ask them questions. So I'm trying to find out from you who these people are, because this goes to the good faith of the applicant coming before us tonight.
I am the applicant.
No, you're the representative of the
I'm
applicant.
the agent of the.
Exactly. The applicant is the owner. No knowledge.
Gentleman's name is Jack.
Okay. And it looks on site, and this came up before us on the last case, the 216. It looked like the same work had been done at the same time to replace the windows and doors that you were also retroactively seeking approval for on behalf of a different client. Was that work done by who was that work done by?
That was done by the tenant, which is the owner of the building.
And was that in coordination with the work that was done at 216?
That I don't know, sir.
Do you know whether it was the same contractor or architect?
I mean, I'm here before you. I was representing Lewis West previously, And I didn't know the 216 was going to be at this, a part of this discussion. I would have brought my file on that one, but Lewis West was my client at 216.
Okay. And then, I mean, it just, and I wasn't sure if it was in your application last time or in staff's report, but there was a discussion about the fact that there were other non-divided light windows on the streetscape at two, and they were all identified as 214, 216, 218, 222, and 228. Was that what you guys were presenting? Was your application presenting
Chair
that?
Benvenu, that discussion was on a different case.
No, I
This is this case that is before you this evening is the first time we have brought this to. The last one that we brought in this for the 214 Old Santa Fe Trail was for a downgrade status that did not get approved.
Well, I'm talking about the last case where there was a request for retroactive approval of the storefront windows and doors that were installed without authorization.
This 214 before you this evening is the first time for the glass doors that were installed without a building
And
permit.
214, but then,
214.
but 216, the same request was being made, right?
216 is a whole different case.
I understand
Why
that.
I'm, why I'm being questioned about
Because,
216
because
this
it
evening.
relates to the streetscape. One of the things that the board is asked to do is decide whether this is consistent with the streetscape. And my understanding was in the last application that there was an effort made to say it's consistent with the streetscape because of the other buildings that are adjacent to it. But it appears that all of those other buildings were also altered without authorization.
So Chair Benvenu, if we want to talk about 216 Old Santa Fe Trail right now, I'm ready and willing to talk about it with you. Would you like to discuss 216?
I'm asking about whether or not all of these
So
windows and doors in 214, 216, 222, 218, and 228 were all done at the same time by the same contractors.
I have no idea.
Okay.
216 was before you, was denied. My client has decided to work with staff to move it forward. There is no appeal going forward. Lewis West had made it very clear to staff that it will go forward as a new case as requested to bring it in compliance. Why we're bringing 216 and testimony from 216 into this discussion, not really sure what your,
I just explained it is because all of these buildings comprise the streetscape and you are requesting a exception based on the idea that these are not harmful to the streetscape because there are other similar windows and doors. And I'm attempting to establish whether those also were done without authorization and therefore should not be considered part of the streetscape for our purposes.
Chair Benvenu, I don't know when the other ones were done. I was brought into 216 after the fact. 214, I am brought in after the fact. What happened in 218, 220, 224, 228,
You have no knowledge.
I think I've said that a couple
Okay,
of times.
just
sir.
want to be clear. That's your testimony then. So we'll talk about the other case later, but I would be concerned if, because we talked about this at the last meeting, that this not come before us repeatedly with new applications, with new designs ad infinitum, and therefore never be restored to its original status. So I hope you're saying you're going to come before us with a request to restore it to its original status.
Chair Benvenu, members of the board, my case right now is for my client, which is the owner of the building that I am working for and have been working for. Our case before you this evening is for consideration of the work that was done there. If it's the decision of the board not to approve that, my client, the owner of the building, is willing to do what they have to get it to a position where it can be approved.
Okay. That's good for the board to know that if the board decides not to approve these, it can also state what would be required to be acceptable. I don't have any other questions this time. Anything else from the board for the applicant? Anything? Yes. Let's go to staff first, and then I'll come back to the member.
Chair Bienvenue, members of the board, I would like to state, because we're talking, hearing the ownership. In 2009, Mark's, the applicant, who's the current owner for this, came before the board with the same agent requesting approval for those pilasters in 2009. It's the same.
Not this agent, but you mean, not Mr. Padilla's. He looks like does not want to be responsible.
2009, in the report that went before the board for those pilasters, was the same owner and that the current owner for 2 years for the same property.
I think that's accurate
Right,
to verify.
and I believe it's the same agent for that same owner in 2009. That's in the packet.
Yeah, it is. What you could do that, find that separately, if you don't mind, Paul, and then in the meantime, I'll ask member Aguilar, or give the floor to member Aguilar Medrano.
Thank you, Vice Chair Bienvenue. The first thing I was going to say, if it truly was a different owner in 2009, then my apologies for misrepresenting that in my comments. It sounds like that is to be determined. If that is the case, yes, my apologies. I'm going to start with some questions for staff. Hopefully a pretty straightforward one. Has a maximum height been calculated for the streetscape, and what is it? And I know you might need to get back to me on that. And then also, Attorney Rubelid, a general question: how is this handled if ownership in fact has switched hands and the previous owner has outstanding non-compliant renovations? Can the new owner be held responsible for those if the direction of the board is to require that the owner bring it back into acceptable status?
I don't, an owner can't get out of restoring compliant status to a structure just by selling it to another owner. The new owner takes it, so long as there was notice given to the previous owner. The new owner takes it with the non-compliant status, with knowledge of the non-compliant status. Because all of these are a matter of public record. These are in the historic review districts. And I don't think there's any precedent for a new owner to say, oh, I didn't know about this, so I don't have to fix it.
Oh, thank you, Attorney Rubelid. That's
And I can tell you that liens can be applied to a structure, and the structure can be required to be sold in what you call an in rem proceeding, in which it's not relevant who owns the structure. The in rem proceeding is against property.
Thank you, Attorney Rubelid. I don't feel like I have my thoughts fully organized, but I think we're probably going to be having a continuous conversation. So I'll touch on what I've thought of so far. I might chime in later again. You are correct. Is he still in here? Oh, sorry, Paul, you were perfectly hiding. Mr. Padilla. So you are correct in that, the windows under the portal don't have to be true divided lights. My issue with that is still the ratio of stucco to glazing. I don't know if there was an exact calculation in this packet, but just eyeing it, looks like the glazing requirement, that ratio is not going to be met. So, and that seems like that just seems like a doable fix in my mind. I think one of the things that the board will probably has had an issue with the past is also the glazing coming all the way down to the floor. Again, I think of that as a pretty simple fix, just a new door fixture. I also have an issue with the pilasters. And if I'm understanding Attorney Rubelid correct, those were outstanding never compliant from the previous owner. So I think we would be able to request that those be looked at. And my proposal for those would be for them to be removed. I know that there was a conditional approval prior, that the conditional approval was cementitious stucco, but since that was never met, I think we can look at that again. It's not something we would approve today, and that's how I try to look at these red tag cases, like Vice Chair Bienvenue so elegantly pointed out one time. We try to review them not as a punishment, but is this something we would approve as a new case tonight? And that's the lens I'm looking at this through. That is it so far. And then the low landscape wall. That one seems pretty black and white to me because it's attached to a primary facade. So not even to say I have an issue with the low landscape wall, but the fact that it's attached to the primary facade on a contributing structure is an issue.
Chair Bienvenue, Member Aguilar Madrano, I think for us with the storefront plate glass doors and window, under E on the design standards for the downtown and east side, it says windows, doors, and portals on publicly visible portions of the building and walls shall be of one of the old Santa Fe styles, except that buildings with portals may have larger plate glass areas for windows under portals only. This is a French door plate glass system. So the doors themselves are plate glass windows. So that doesn't meet the code standard. It's our concern.
Thank you for pointing that out, Paul.
Paul, did you find anything in the packet relating to the 2009 case?
Oh, I haven't looked.
Oh, okay. That's
Sorry.
fine. If you just come back to us when you have.
And also about the height, please, Paul.
Oh, the height
the
is
fence.
8 feet max for commercial buildings in the historic district.
And what was the calculation done for the streetscape in particular?
Given that it's a commercial building and it's on the property line, it would be, the maximum is 8 feet.
Okay,
That would be the max.
thank you.
Yes, Member Cherry.
Mr. McKeno has his hand raised.
Oh, yes. Director McKeno.
Members of the board, there has not been a street height calculation for that address.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, the wall height calculation, there has not been one done on that street for that particular address.
Okay, but what Paul was saying, the fence max
Fence,
of 8
yeah,
foot
if
still
it's more
applies.
than 20 feet back from the streetscape, then it can go to the maximum allowable.
And is this 20 feet, Paul?
Yes, ma'am.
So the question in terms of this gate and fence is more the materiality potentially, like in the color, not so much the height. That's what we're looking at.
Chair Bienvenue, Member Aguilar Madrano, would be the materiality.
Okay, thank you, Paul.
Just a clarification then on this issue about the door and the window under a portal. So I think we need to conceptualize these differently, as you just said. There's the door issue and there's the window issue, right? So with respect to the door, I don't believe, based on what you just said or what I've reviewed, that there's any provision for a glass door, even under a portal, being having a dimension of glass more than 30 inches in any direction, is there? That applies only to windows, is that right?
Chair Bienvenue, that is correct. When doors, since they're not addressed in the design standards for the historic downtown and east side, they would need to request an exception because the code doesn't state they can. Given that it doesn't state they can, they would have to request an exception for that.
Right. And then taking the windows separately, I mean, we have a couple of issues there. One that the board needs to resolve in terms of the exception, but just to be clear on what the code permits. First of all, it does permit under a portal glass. The board may approve glass greater than 30 inches in dimension, correct? So that's permissive.
Chair
from the board's
Bienvenue,
perspective.
that is correct, sir.
In other words, it's not mandated that it's allowed. It is permissive from the board. Okay. And then what about the 30-inch rule from the corner? That still applies to the windows and the doors? Or the 3-foot rule, I'm sorry.
Chair Bienvenue, from staff's understanding, the 3-foot rule, it applies here. So they meet the 3-foot rule here. However, it is our understanding that when these plate glass windows touch the base of the ground,
Right.
they need to come before the board with an exception for that.
It is more than touching the ground. We've never permitted it to be within 3 feet of the ground unless an exception has been granted, which I can recall at least one time that was the case. But typically, it's not. It's more than just not meeting the ground. So I assume that that it's always been determined that that is a corner of the facade, the ground where the facade meets the ground. It still needs to be 3 feet in height from there. Is that not correct?
Chair Bienvenue, staff would have to do some more research on that for you, unless their staff can respond to that.
Because in the past, we've required exceptions to even get within a couple feet of the ground. So we must be basing that on something.
Yes, Chair Bienvenue, with reference to doors and windows, doors are the only ones that can go down to the ground. It's
Right.
typical of Adobe construction that an opening other than a door go all the way down to the ground. So what has been applied in the past is that at least 3 feet in
Okay.
height. There was a case that was over on the plaza that
Right.
was at issue and required an exception.
Correct.
Concern. So that
Okay.
was the previous case that you were.
Right, the one on the corner. And the reason was that there were some, in that streetscape, there were some other more plate glass type storefronts nearby. Okay, so it's a 3-foot rule, basically. That's all I have for right now. Thanks. Okay, so anything further from the applicant before I open to public comment?
Chair Benvenue, members of the board. I've heard a number of times that would require an exception for the certain items, the glass, and the glass does not go to the ground, it goes to the floor. So just to be clear, I know we say ground, it's not ground. There's no ground there. It is the floor, the interior of the lease space. It's been said a number of times we need an exception. I believe the exception has been requested. The meeting was even posted as an exception requested. So to say there has been an exception requested.
Oh, no, I
for
know
the items that
before
you've
us.
asked for,
No, I understand.
that you've referenced, Chair Benvenue.
Yes, I meant, I wasn't, I wasn't disputing that so much as just to say that that is the code requirement for the board's benefit,
So
that they
this-
need an exception.
And this evening is the first time that I hear that there is a 3-foot rule from the floor to glass or openings of any window types in an elevation. I've always heard and understood the 36-inch rule from the corners of the building to an opening. I've always dealt with that. That's one that I know and I use in design. I've never used that or been aware of that from a floor to a window. Now, in a residential component, if it's a sleeping room, there's a maximum height that it can be from the floor. So this is the first time I hear that.
All right, yes, Director
Thank you,
Lamboy.
Chairman, Member Bienvenue. So with reference to the 3-foot rule, this is more of a rule of thumb when considering the dominating effect of Adobe construction. And, in the case of storefront windows, although this was originally a residential building and was designated as such as it's related to its residential use, although it has been converted to a commercial use, storefront windows typically had the base. If you walk around along San Francisco Street, you see that all throughout the streetscape. And so this type of feature is not found in where it goes to the floor in the downtown and east side historic districts. It may be in other districts, but not the downtown and east side.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Chair Bienvenu.
Yes.
Just to just to share with you for the 2009 case, I need to redact my phrase that Mr. Padilla was the applicant. It was the current applicant for this case was the applicant for that 2009 case. So the ownership is similar. The owner at that time was different, but the applicant was the same person in which Mr. Padilla is representing today.
The clarification. Are there any members of the public in the room that wish to be heard on this case? Please step to the podium and be sworn in if you have not yet. Yes, ma'am.
Hello. Please raise your right hand, state your name and address for the record.
Elizabeth West, 318 Center Street in the South Capitol. And-
Do you solemnly declare and affirm that the testimony you have in reference to this item shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, and do this under the penalties of perjury?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Chair, she's been sworn in.
Thank you.
Name?
I was just walking the other evening rather, on the plaza. And so I was at that famous corner with the windows that go all the way down to the floor, or was it the ground floor, or was it the second floor? It looks like they go down pretty far. And they've sort of added, by the way, insult to injury, as far as I'm concerned, by putting cute, beautiful lights all around it and emphasizing the metal. So that kind of was with me when I was listening to all this. And I sort of feel sorry for the original building that's been made into a commercial building and then has been abused with gigantic sheets of glass. So I think you are dealing with this very well. And I happen to agree with your line of questioning. And I know it must be frustrating. It's frustrating for me in the audience to hear the tremendous amount of confusion as a result of going ahead and working on something to such a degree as we see in front of us here. And then hoping that it will be okay. If I hear them correctly, I'm hearing them say they'll be willing to do pretty much anything to make it go back to where it should be. That looks like an expensive proposition to me, but doable, and I would welcome that. So good luck with this. I do think that pretty much everything needs to be denied. Thank you.
Stephanie Beninato. I heard Mr. Padilla say that the owner did not approve of the changes, but he didn't say he didn't know about them. And again, if you have a tenant, you're really responsible for what the tenant does. It should be in the lease someplace. You just can't walk away from it because the tenant did it, nor can you walk away from the fact that you had a fire. Structures have fires. You still have to comply with the code when you redo it. And something that was red tagged in 09 and has never been corrected is not a approved non-conforming use. It is just non-conforming and is in violation. I would ask, as with Ms. West did, that you don't grant exceptions here, and that you require the windows to come up and that there be a mass displayed in this front facade in particular. I would also ask that the advertising, that is the placement of sculptures or whatever these objects are in the planters, be removed, and that the window or door where they have that triangulated top and then the door, that you also look at that. I point out that one on Old Santa Fe Trail, right at the plaza. I believe Mr. Padilla actually was the agent there. And the rationale was that they had to display goods, and that's why they needed to go all the way to the floor as opposed to the ground. And they've never used it to display goods. It's just there. And it really detracts from the harmony of the streetscape. It detracts from the idea of a historic structure. And I would urge you not to grant exceptions for anything here, and that you require the applicant to come back, I think as you did in the other case recently, and resubmit so that it actually complies with the historic design standards. And I appreciate that you pointed out the larger one in D that gives you more authority to look at the whole as opposed to just a primary facade. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else from the public in the room that wishes to speak? I see no one. Is there anyone online?
Chair Bienvenue, nobody has their hand raised.
Very good. Did you have anything further, Mr. Padilla, on behalf of the applicant? Not putting on the spot, it's just that you approached the podium, so I just wanted to make sure before I turn it over to the board.
Chair Bienvenue, I believe we've gone through the items, the additional items that staff had added to the presentation this evening. Thank you for the clarification. As I said, in 2009, I was not a part of that. Whoever the applicant was, the owner was, I don't know. I wasn't a part of it. So I thank you for that clarification. The owner that I am representing, again, has asked me to assist him with some type of way to, one, get what has been developed approved, or to a point where we can get it approved to where we can go forward with the building permit, or work with staff to be able to come to a solution that works for everybody. So with that, thank you for your time.
You. Yes, sir. Mr. Duran.
Chair Bienvenue, members of the board, Mr. Padilla, thank you. I believe it's staff's recommendation under what our manager stated earlier is to restore this structure. That would be a staff's request. And if the applicant is willing to do so, I'm sure we can make this work.
That's good to know. And when you say restore the structure, do you have a date in mind? Restore it to the condition as of when?
I believe the latest, before the plate glass windows in this picture here, I believe was in 2023. So we would request that it be restored to the 2023 design.
Are there no changes that were made prior to the 2023 changes that are an issue tonight?
I believe the middle gate is not in this 2023, and we can work with them with the gate and with the low planter. However, that storefront needs to really be reconsidered.
Does staff have a position on the board's purview over the pilasters who which do not conform to conditions that the board imposed?
Staff would ask the board to make a recommendation, and staff would stand by the board's recommendation.
Okay, I'm going to need a motion, or there's discussion. To let me know, otherwise the motion, and might want to break it down into subcategories for clarity. Or maybe not. Maybe it can all be done in one. I'll leave it up to you. That's my job tonight. Anybody? You want to? Okay.
Are you preparing to
or-
make a motion, Madeline? Yes, so go ahead. Yeah,
So
I'll be your
Member
second.
Aguilar Madrano. Oh, no, you were going to go ahead. Is that what you said?
I was going to defer.
Yeah, that's what I thought. She wants you to go ahead.
Mhm.
So Member Aguilar Madrano will proceed.
Right over.
Thank you, Vice Chair Bienvenue. Mr. Padilla, again, I'm sorry, the position you're in. I think you made a compelling argument as you could for your clients. Okay, in case number 2025-009, actually, I'm sorry. I need to stop my motion to ask the applicant a question, as I believe we do. Would you have a preference if the board is not going to approve this tonight? Would you have a preference in terms of denial versus postponing and coming back?
I think, Chair Benvenu, Member Aguilar Medrano, we want to come back. I think I thought I had made it clear that I was not looking for a denial this evening. There is no intent to do anything counterproductive if there is a motion by the board to ask us to work. We're not afraid to work, but a denial throws this whole thing back to square one. And that's something we would not want to see.
Okay, great.
May I ask you a question? This is out of order, sorry. Mr. Rubelie, could you tell me legally, is there any legal implication on one of those two choices? In other words, if we deny, which you do not prefer to have, Mr. I'm sorry. So can you tell me, would that work? I mean, if we make a denial, decide to deny everything, whatever is on the docket, will they be able to do their work with the staff? Or I guess I'm saying, is there a preferred way to do this? Because we want to work with them, of course.
I don't know that
Would that make a difference? Which way we go? Legally.
legally, I think one of the main things is if you deny this project, they can redesign the project and they can present it to the board again with it, with material differences in what was presented tonight. But my understanding is then they would have to pay another fee and go through the whole application process again.
Oh, okay.
Right. Whereas if you postpone the project with the applicant's implicit approval, then they can go and redesign the project and present it again without going through the whole approval process and pay an additional fee and get a new case number and that sort of thing. Now, I'm not sure what's taking place in the municipal court with respect to the notice of violations, but the municipal court may have to proceed unless the applicant makes a pitch to the municipal judge that we're trying to get this redesigned so that we get the Historic District Review Board's approval, in which case that may have a bearing on how the municipal judge handles that. On the other hand, that is something that my understanding is that is something the applicant would have to request from the municipal judge, or the property owner would have to request.
Mr. Graham.
Now, if you postpone it, they come back with some design, they can keep coming back and keep coming back and keep coming back. See, the goal here is to restore this structure. That's the goal. So if the applicant is willing to restore this structure to its original condition back in 2023, we'll work with them. But staff would recommend that you recommend denial. Because if you recommend denial, then we can force it to the court, and the court, because they can do like the other applicant and keep sending back the same applicant and never really getting anywhere. But once you deny it, then the court gives that order that you need to restore that structure to its contributing original status. Well, then now we're making headway. Now staff can enforce that.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Did you want to
Sure.
continue with your motion or not?
Chair Benvenu,
Yes.
I know the statement that staff member Duran just made was their desire. He says, staff, that is our desire to bring it back. I don't think that's allowing my applicant due process to come back in and work with staff to find a solution that works for everyone. You know, that's Mr. Duran's personal opinion, and that has been stated many times. So I really welcome
Just to clar-
the board's position, the decision.
Sure.
Thank you.
No, but just to be very clear, two things. One is staff always makes recommendations to the board, and which is what staff just did. And the board relies on having recommendations, doesn't mean they always abide by them. Secondarily, it's never taken as a personal opinion, but rather as a considered judgment of the entire preservation division when staff speaks to us. So with that clarification, this is very, very consistent with the way we always operate. Yes, Attorney Ribbley.
Chair Bienvenu and members of the board, I heard Mr. Padilla mention due process, and I assure you, the city attorney's office and the staff and the board should always be mindful of due process, but due process does not require more than notice, an opportunity to be heard by an impartial tribunal, and an opportunity to appeal to a higher tribunal. So due process only requires that he have the opportunity to come in and make his presentation and call his witnesses and answer questions and present whatever drawings and so on and so forth he wants. But the idea that an applicant gets to come before the board over and over and over again is not that's not required by due process.
Okay, I appreciate that. And
If the applicant and the board can work out something by which he gets more time, then you can do that. Nothing says you can't do that, but due process does not require more than one hearing.
sure. Thank you for that clarification. And if the board does decide that that these changes are detrimental to the public welfare, then that's an ongoing injury as long as this matter continues. So I'm going to turn back to Member Degnan, if you'd like to make a motion.
I'll take a stab at it. Pardon me. Sorry. I'm trying to make it simple. So let me just say what I think I've heard you say and what we've all said. I will recommend denial and hope I get a second. And I am clear about respecting the willingness of the applicants to work with the staff. It's not only an intelligent decision, it's a cooperative decision. And it could be a good story in a year or two that there's been some changes and we're happy with it. So I'm just going to say denial, and part of that motion would be understanding that the applicant will work with the staff to recover what was and to become compliant with our law and our ordinance. Do I have a second?
Before we do, I just want to see if I can make sure I understand the motion. So the motion is to deny the application in its entirety, sounds like.
Yes,
Don't let me put words in your mouth, because I do want.
in its entirety.
And then secondly, I assume that means, because we have to, this is coming before us with a request for exceptions, that the motion would include findings that the exception criteria have not been met. Is that fair to say? And as discussed at the board meeting and in the staff report. And then finally, that there's also an additional request to staff to ensure that the structure be returned to its condition before the unauthorized changes were made. Is that what I understand the motion to be?
Beautifully said.
Is there a second or first? That sounds like maybe discussion.
Point of discussion. Can we clarify the former status being restored? I would like to see the status restored prior to the unauthorized construction of the stone pilasters, which was in 2009, but I don't have an exact date of when they were constructed.
I accept that.
I'm only afraid I'm happy to get feedback. I think that was a question perhaps directed towards staff and the city attorney. But it may be two separate issues about restoration. One is the pilasters as a standalone restoration issue, and then everything else is a pre-2023 restoration. Because we don't really know what might have taken place between 2010 and 2022, right? At least there's been no record. My only thoughts, but I'm happy to hear clarification to Member Aguilar Medrano's query from staff or from Mr. Durant.
Chair Bienvenu, Member Aguilar Madrano, we have the construction permits for the pilasters here, and we have, I believe at the time, Mr. Rash gave the approval for the pilasters with that condition. Install 3 high. And I believe that took place. My understanding, they were constructed in November of 2009.
My question was, since it was approved with a condition, but the condition was never met.
Correct.
Yeah, so I'd like to make a comment. My observation at the site today regarding the pilasters was that they had been stuccoed at some point in time. And I'd be curious to know if that they had been approved to be stuccoed, if there was ever a record of a final inspection of them being stuccoed.
Director Mokino?
Bienvenu and Member Cherry, yes, they have been approved and finalized with the final inspection, but that was with the stucco, not with the rocks that are there now.
Right. It appeared that the tile stone or cultured stone or whatever's cladding them now was applied over a stucco. So it looked like they had been stuccoed and then that had been applied afterwards.
That is correct.
Okay. Can I make a few more comments?
Sure, go ahead.
I know we're in the middle of a motion, but
Right.
I want
No, it's fine.
point of clarification a little bit and then some reference. So just to consolidate this, my understanding right now is that this can be approved, this can be denied, this can be postponed, or that it can be required of them to remove all of the things that have been done without permission. There's actually 4 options on the table as to normally where there's 3.
Right.
Okay. Of a regular case, I would call it. Yeah.
Right. The last one is more unusual.
Yeah. And
Order to restore, but it is provided for in the code.
right. But it is one of the options in this particular.
I would say, yeah, it's an additional option. I don't think it would be.
It sounds like
It's
I'm hearing
in
a-
addition to the others as opposed to in lieu of the others.
right. Okay. So that's, I guess, I see. It is.
The way the motion is being made is denying the application to retroactively approve these improvements and in addition to order restoration to its pre-improvement status.
Okay. I guess
Two separate kind of orders there.
okay. And then can I ask Attorney Rublade and Director Lamboy for some clarification on that as well? Because I heard you were the one that brought that up, Director Lamboy. I believe that's another option. I just, as opposed to approval, denial, or postponement with conditions, that another option is restoration of how it was prior to the unpermitted illegal work.
I think it would just make a better record if you make that decision that this has to be restored, you should state that in your motion. On the other hand, if you don't state that, the municipal court through a red tag and notice of violation, and the violations have been issued, can also accomplish the same thing. But just to make a good record, if that is something that the board agrees on, that should be stated.
Okay. And it would be in addition to a denial, or it would be in lieu of?
In addition,
Okay.
Obviously, if you approve, you can't very well require him to
Yeah.
refer to its previous condition.
Sure. But you could postpone and say, under the condition that it be restored to its original, or whatever the condition prior to the illegal work. I don't want to say original or.
I think a postponement is just legally, if you postpone, you postpone everything, it's, I don't know that it is consistent to make a decision on one thing and postpone on the other, because I have to do a finding of fact and conclusion of law. His appeal deadline starts running, and governing body really shouldn't be in a position of having to hear an appeal when there's still some component that hasn't been decided.
Understood.
All right. That's clear.
No, I understand. Thank you.
Yeah, generally an appeal means everything has been decided. There isn't still something with the initial hearing board that hasn't been decided, because then they have to appeal again if they don't like the second decision.
Understood. Yeah. And so, Aguilar Madrano, did you make a friendly amendment to Egan's motion, or just a comment? Okay.
Or she's only commented, but.
Good. Then,
I was about to make a friendly amendment. Actually, your clarifications, I think I have a better way to phrase it, but we can keep, so.
I just wanted the motion restated.
Okay.
And I was trying to figure out if it was restated with friendly amendment or just restated. So just if the motion could be restated before you continue, that would be helpful for me. Thanks.
Just point of procedure, I think we need a second, and then it could be a request for a friendly amendment. Are you seconding the motion that was been made and then seeking a friendly amendment? And keep in mind, you can second a motion and still vote against it. You can second it just for the purpose of having discussion.
But I think what member Cherry is requesting is that the motion be stated again, just since we've been having discussion. Is that allowed?
It is, but I
Do you
did
want me to second
state it, but
first?
I'll state it a second time.
I'm going to
It
ask,
had three components. The first component was denying the application as submitted in its entirety. The second was adopting as findings of fact and conclusions of law, the recommendations, the findings and position statements put forth in staff's report and articulated in addition by staff and the board at the meeting tonight. And third, to order that the status be, or that the structure be restored to its condition prior to the unauthorized alterations.
very much so. What is the friendly amendment? Let's,
But at first, we're just trying to clarify the motion. That was your motion, right?
after you help me with it, yes, thank you.
Okay, and then now are you seconding and then you're going to make a friendly amendment?
Aguilar Madrano will second and propose a friendly amendment. The friendly amendment be that the, to restore the condition, restore to condition prior to any unapproved work on staff record. And I think that way we don't have to get into the details of an exact date, which exact items. It leaves it just any unapproved work needs to be restored that staff
With-
has on record.
With the oversight and working with the staff on that.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can accept that. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Does the board have any further discussion prior to roll call vote? Anything else? Nope. Hearing none? No. First, we'll take a vote and then we can see if we need to clarify anything. Roll call.
Member Cherry,
Yes.
Member Aguilar Madrano,
Yes.
Member Dagnan.
Yes.
The motion has passed, Chair.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead, Mr. PDA.
Chair Benvenu, question and members of the board, with the denial, this case is over, correct? I need to start from scratch with a new submission to historic preservation.
I don't know about this.
Was that the intent of what was proposed this evening? That we basically used nothing that we've had before. We have to come back with a new presentation as opposed to understanding where we're at coming out of this meeting. Going forward, we could make the everything that you've just acquired through a denial. Now we have to start from scratch with a new case, with a new application, with new.
That was my intention.
No, I'm
That was your
sorry. Let me answer the question. So we're not going to explain the motion. The motion was stated on the
no.
record. We don't get into the intent of the moving party because everyone voted on it. It's not only the moving party's intention that matters, it's what was stated and voted on.
Right.
The only thing that I can say definitively is, yes, that would mean that this case is complete. All the other speculations as to what the board intended or desired would be out of order.
That wasn't what I was not challenging the board
Sure.
at all. I just wanted to make clear, and I guess from staff, that this is a new application that I need to move forward.
You should consult with staff and they will be happy to explain exactly what the status of your structure is at this point in time.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, I'm not talking into the microphone. Let's see. Next is discussion items. Are there any discussion items? I assume that refers to discussion items from staff. Is that what this is a placeholder for? Because the next matter is matters from the board, so I don't think it's discussion items from the board.
Yes, Chair Benvenu, there are staff communications, but discussion items also allow for staff to ask questions, for instance, on a code interpretation or what have you.
Okay.
That's not related to a particular case, but
Anything you'd like to
never
discuss?
used. So I might just in the future do discussion items or with the board or
Okay.
members from the board.
Are there any discussion items?
There are not.
That's what I was inferring. Let's say matters from the board. Anybody? Nothing? Oh, yes. Member Aguilar Madrona.
You Vice Chair Bienvenu. I did have a question or maybe just a request for you all to look into. There is a new parking sign on Washington Avenue for the underground parking lot that is new. Are you aware of it? Does it, and if you could just look to ensure that it complies with standard.
We are aware of it as of today. I saw it going by and I told Inspector Moyestas to look into it, and it's current planning who does the approval of signs. So we'll look into it.
Thank you, Gary.
Anything else? I have a matter. So, it wasn't appropriate to bring up in the context of case 9947 because it wasn't directly related to the application, but I've always had concern over the proliferation of sculptures and rugs and knickknacks and moving objects all over Canyon Road, for one place, but specifically near the plaza and specifically on Old Santa Fe Trail, where there's sometimes 100 or 150 separate sculptures being arranged in front of the fronts of these buildings. And then there's now a similar commercial enterprise at the corner of Acequia Madre and Camino del Monte Sol, where the entire parking lot is full of rugs and objects and carts and things. Again, literally hundreds of different objects. And then the walls are covered with them as well. And I don't know if there are any regulations on this. I'm particularly concerned about near the downtown and plaza area. that this is very, very detrimental to the historic character of that area in general, and often to the very specific building that they're covering all day long. And in looking, I know we have signage standards, but I've never personally been able to find regulations that specifically address what can and can't be put out in front of your business or hanging from the walls and roofs during the daytime to advertise your business. So I guess I'm just asking, are there any regulations that govern that? And if not, is this something that could be and should be addressed in the upcoming amendments to the land use code?
Chair Bienvenu, you bring up a really good point. And actually, there's been concern from members of the council as to the same. So in the current code, just a quick research, in the current code, really outdoor display of goods for sale really isn't dealt with comprehensively. There are some standards for retail structures over 30,000 square feet, for instance, Walmart or what have you. So, but we don't have anything particular to historic districts other than display in the windows and the like. So that would be a good item to put on our list for the phase 1 or phase 2A updates. So just so you know, once phase 1 is adopted, we are going to actually break down the subsequent phases as we deal with the key issues. So it's not one huge document that you and the other boards and commissions will have to look at, you know, and Frank to he reviewed our code as well. So, but actually have more digestible pieces to review. So we'll definitely put that on list.
Okay. So I'm really glad to hear that. And so the answer is what I thought, that there actually isn't very good regulation at this time of that kind of thing. So it's not, people aren't necessarily even out of compliance in a way that could be enforced. So, and is that something that, you know, that someone like myself or the city council members or members of the public that have concerns about this, is this already sort of on your agenda and on your radar as something to address in the update? And by you, I mean the preservation division and the land use department, or is it something that we who are concerned should be mentally marking as something to bring to your attention at a later date?
Chair Bienvenu, it is something that we have a large list of things
It's on the list
to be addressed that we've comprehensively put together. I will make sure that this is specifically stated.
Great.
You know, there also is opportunity with the different members of the city council. One of the members or more can submit a resolution directing staff to do an intermediate amendment, code amendment, not, you know, have it come through as part of a bunch of amendments. So that might be happening with outdoor dining is one. So there's that opportunity as well.
Okay, well, I guess I would just complete the thought and then I'll pass the baton here. But I guess to me, this would not, I would see it as something to approach in the context of the larger picture of the amendments rather than a standalone item, because to me, it really gets at what are we trying to accomplish here in our historic districts now that many, many, many years have gone by since any of these issues have been addressed, and we have a whole new historic district in essence as far as what people are doing within it. So that's the way I would view it, and it would be great if it's just sort of on the division's list already as an item to be discussed, as opposed to waiting for someone to bring it up at a meeting far down the road.
And there are some standards for street vendors, which I would have to reacquaint myself with, you know, to determine whether that's a good approach, and it could be a quick and easy fix. But so, you know, certainly we can strategize on something that might be a text amendment that's relatively simple, or whether it's going to be part of a larger process.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, Member Degnan.
Thank you. That's a great concern. I share it with you. And I was just going to add perhaps the Public Safety Committee or Public Safety might be more appropriate to address it down the line. I don't know. Or a group of people, including our team and people like that.
Yeah,
So-
that brings up a very good point. For instance, our Public Works and our life safety, if there's something that's being blocked, like a fire lane, or if a sidewalk is being obstructed, they will go out and enforce these things. But if it's on private property, there's, no teeth in our ordinance.
Thank you, Vice Chair Bienvenue. Just for the record, I wanted to state that I agree with the previous two statements. I had already jotted it down in my personal ongoing list of things to bring up in, hopefully in the code amendment. Also agree it could be a potential safety hazard, especially tripping hazard. Some of these things that are placed on the ground. And I will just also add, since we're talking about code amendments, I'm always a proponent of, I think we should have jurisdiction over historic trees, either of a certain age or of a certain caliber. But don't worry, Heather, I've got it on my list.
Well, you want it on Heather's list, though.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, yeah, I guess I was meaning more in terms of this board being able to have some authority in regards to, historic landscapes, which I think we have so many historic trees, especially in the downtown east side district, that really make the character of our district. To be discussed later. Thank you.
Very good. Next meeting is April 8th, 2025, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second,
Aguilar Morjano seconds.
I guess we'll do a roll call. Just as an aside, even though there's a motion pending, City Attorney, I personally, when I'm chairing meetings, I don't seek, pursuant to Robert's Rules of Order, either roll call votes on minutes or roll call votes on adjournment, but rather just do both without objection. So is that something that we can streamline some of these meetings with? I'm only following the procedure that I've seen the board engage in, but I personally don't think they're required. And I think it's very inefficient use of our time.
Well, Member Bienvenu, I don't know that a roll call vote is required other than voice vote. But I think it's a good idea to ask. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed.
Well, if I could, I think the rules of order, and that way I prefer to do it when I'm chairing a meeting, is to ask if there are any objections to adjournment. Hearing none, we are adjourned.
It's very similar.
And the
to
same
asking.
with minutes. Are there any objections to approval of the minutes? Hearing none, they're approved.
That-
That is specifically provided for under the rules. I just want to make sure that's not in conflict with any of the city policies that you're aware of.
And Board of Adjustment don't do that.
Okay,
All right.
just for that. I think in the future we can, make this a little more streamlined.
Sounds like it's stylistic.
It's a stylistic issue. Yeah, it's a time issue too. Okay. Yeah. That's all I have. We are, did we vote? No, we didn't. Roll call vote, please. Since we're still under the old system.
Member Cherry,
Yes.
Member Aguilar Madrano,
Yes.
Member Dagnan.
Yes.
Motion's approved, Chair.
Thank you very much.